more about the Youth Empowerment and Climate Action Platform, or YCAP. Let us all watch this video. That was an amazing introductory video to YCAP. Now, let us open the dialogue formally with some messages from our convening partners. First, let us all give a warm round of virtual applause to Ms. Connie Wignaraja, Assistant Secretary General, Assistant Administrator, and Director of the Regional Bureau for Asia and the Pacific of the United Nations Development Program.
Greetings to all young environmental human rights defenders, activists, stakeholders across Asia and the Pacific. A very warm welcome to this regional dialogue on youth empowerment in climate action. This is an important moment in the lead up to the Stockholm+50 conference in June. We hope an influencing one. Now, we know that the window to limit global warming is narrowing, and the choices we make today will dictate the future of the planet. It'll dictate our futures as well. As the world faces growing risks from climate change and loss of biodiversity, we have to do so much more and do it much faster. UNDP's climate promise has helped governments to connect and engage with over 100,000 people through over 1,200 stakeholder consultations. They have focused on the revision of the NDCs to drive far more ambitious targets. So today, we are here to recognize and support the efforts of you, young people, as change agents to take on the challenge, to do more to course correct on climate change, and to push the rest of us to do the same. Now, UNDP's YCAP and Movers program have conducted 262 sessions, workshops, consultations, reaching more than 12,000 youth, supporting half a dozen national governments in the Asia-Pacific region to prioritize youth engagement in reducing carbon emissions. This dialogue and platform will provide you with the ideas, the knowledge, the tools to take this commitment and efforts further forward. In this region, we are home to more than 660 million young people who are essential to the solution. And now with digital tech, high levels of mobile connectivity, innovation, and more robust education systems, together with a thriving private sector, you are making a difference today for a better tomorrow. And most of this will be about the spirit, energy, and purpose that you bring. It is truly inspiring to see all the young people here who are ready to work together with governments and other partners to take accelerated actions on climate change. So to all involved, your presence means a lot, and your actions going forward will count. That we promise.
Thank you very much, Ms. Connie Vignaraja of the United Nations Development Program. To echo some of her important points that were shared, the choices that we make today will dictate the future of our planet and our own future as well. Indeed, in terms of climate action, we have to do so much more and at a faster rate. This dialogue allows all of us, 660 million strong, to take our climate commitment and efforts further. At this point, let us hear it next from Ms. Deborah Kumini, Regional Director for East Asia and the Pacific of the United Nations Children's Fund, for her opening remarks.
Good morning to all of you young participants, youth leaders, climate activists, environmental and human rights advocates. It is a pleasure to welcome you all to this exciting event. Today's regional dialogue on youth empowerment in climate action is one of many consultations with children and youth being held in the region and around the world in the lead up to Stockholm+50. It is an important recognition that young people have a critical role to play in making a difference in environmental policies and in demanding urgent action from their governments. We know that children and youth will increasingly bear the burden of adverse climate change impacts, despite their being the least responsible for it. Climate change affects the rights of children and adolescents to basic services, including quality education, health, nutrition, clean water and sanitation, and so much more. On top of this, climate change is affecting the safety of young people, with violence in communities as a result of fewer resources, of personal safety put at risk when demanding action, and increasing levels of anxiety over the future. The climate crisis is a child rights crisis. It is a crisis of today, not tomorrow. Let us never forget that all children, adolescents, and youth have the right to a clean and safe environment, and that young people have the right to participate in decisions that affect their lives and must be consulted in decision-making processes. This is all reflected in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and together with young people, UNICEF works to uphold these rights. Yet, children and youth continue to be underrepresented in national policies to address climate change. Our research and our conversations with young leaders and with children are showing us time and again that young people are passionate about the environment, yet they need more information, more understanding, and more opportunities to take action and to share their perspectives in a way where they will truly be heard and will be able to influence decision makers. The Youth Engagement in Climate Action platform, of which UNICEF is proud to be one of several partners, brings together such a diverse group of young leaders and activists and uses a real partnership approach to promote regular dialogue and support for young people to claim their right to participate and their right to a healthy environment. We all need to support each other, to find ways to act, to raise our voices and be part of the solution. I trust all of you, young participants, youth leaders, climate activists, and advocates will make best use of this platform and will make waves for your voices to become more and more influential. You will also be able to count on UNICEF's ongoing work to support climate-smart schools across the region and to help every student acquire climate literacy, because we recognize that the first step in this process is to know more about climate change and how it impacts our everyday life, our community, and the world we live in. We are also working on a research initiative to map out young people's legal right to environmental justice in East Asia, and look forward to sharing this report with you and to working together to support safe spaces for participation. I very much look forward to learning about the results of today's dialogue and to seeing the youth engagement in climate action platform grow through your leadership and your participation. I wish you a fruitful and engaging discussion. And remember, every step counts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Deborah Comini of the United Nations Children's Fund. To recap some of her important points, young people have a critical role to play in making a difference in environmental policies and demanding urgency from governments. Climate change negatively affects the rights, safety, and well-being of children and youth, despite being the least responsible for contributing to it. All children and youth have the right to a clean and safe environment, as well as to consultation, participation, and representation. Again, thank you, Ms. Deborah Comini. Up next, we have Ms. Ina Parvanova, Director, Communications and Engagement of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC. Let us all give Ms. Ina Parvanova a warm round of virtual applause.
Good afternoon. Dear colleagues, on behalf of UN Climate Change and the UNFCCC IGES Regional Collaboration Center for Asia and the Pacific, I would like to extend a warm welcome to the Road to Stockholm+50 Regional Dialogue. At the outset, I would like to express my sincere thanks to all the partners for coming together to organize this regional dialogue for empowering youth in the region to enhance their understanding of inclusive climate action. As you all know, governments adopted the Glasgow Climate Pact at COP26 at the end of last year, aiming to turn the 2020s into a decade of climate action and support. The package of decisions consists of a range of agreed items, including strengthened efforts to bring resilience to climate change, to curb greenhouse emissions, and to provide the necessary finance for both. Nations have also collectively agreed to work to reduce the gap between existing emission reduction plans and what is required to reduce emissions, so that the rise in the global average temperature can be limited to 1.5 degrees. UN Climate Change is contributing to supporting the implementation of this package of decisions through multilateralism and inclusiveness. At COP26, parties have also adopted the Glasgow Work Programme on Action for Climate Empowerment, also referred to as ACE, which is the toolbox to ensure that people everywhere in all walks of life are equipped, informed, and empowered to contribute to addressing the climate emergency. In the work program, parties recognize the importance of youth as agents of change and the need to promote youth participation in relevant climate processes at the national and international level, such as involving youth in national delegations at UNFCCC meetings. UN Climate Change supports the meaningful engagement and participation of youth in our process, in particular through the regular coordination and collaboration with YOUNGO, the official children and youth constituency. I wish to take a moment to acknowledge the important role of YOUNGO. YOUNGO's vision is to empower children and youth to take action and works to enhance their skills and capacity to drive the necessary and ambitious climate actions and policies at all levels towards a livable, climate-just future. I anticipate that discussions today will recognize the work of the young people in the region, while also highlighting the challenges youth face, both regionally and locally, to take inclusive climate action. To address challenges already identified through our contribution to the Youth Empowerment in Climate Action platform, supported by SIDA, an inclusive in-depth learning and traineeship program will be offered this year to improve the capacities of youth from diverse communities to effectively participate and engage in climate policy development and negotiations, with a specific focus on the UNFCCC intergovernmental negotiation process. Let me reaffirm, UN Climate Change and UNFCCC IGES Regional Collaboration Center for Asia and the Pacific remain committed to supporting youth as critical agents of change to implement climate actions and strategies, and I'm looking forward to the reflecting of the outcomes of this dialogue and to our continued support for your climate action.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Ina Parvanova of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. As mentioned in her address, there is an immediate need for joint efforts for climate action and climate finance that have to be highlighted. The importance of youth as agents of change at the national and international levels are touched on again and again, with YOUNGO having been voicing young people's opinions and thoughts loud and clear. Up next, we would like to welcome our next speaker joining us here live today. We have Ms. Anna Maria Altorp, the head of the development section at the Swedish Embassy in Bangkok. Let us all give Ms. Anna Maria Altorp a warm round of virtual applause. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Distinguished guests, distinguished representatives of the civil society, and distinguished representatives of the YECAP youth, I'm honored and glad for this opportunity to deliver some introductory remarks to YECAP's Regional Youth Dialogue, the road to Stockholm+50, and the Regional Dialogue on Youth Empowerment in Climate Action. 5 decades after the 1972 UN conference in Stockholm that placed environmental concerns at the forefront of the international agenda, Stockholm again welcomes the world in June this year to consider the pathway to a truly sustainable future. As part of this journey that will lead to Stockholm+50, the YECAP Regional Youth Dialogue held today and tomorrow is important. We here listen to you, to the voices of YECAP fellows from the Asia and the Pacific. You are not only the future, you are also the present. We have seen a growing movement of young people across the Asia-Pacific region calling for action on the climate agenda. Building upon the momentum and continued partnerships, it is encouraging to see this year's road to Stockholm+50 Regional Dialogue summon so many young people from all walks of life. From young environmental rights activists, climate champions, youth who aspire to take action, create change, and work towards the SDG 13. Youth who are curious about climate change, the future of green jobs, inclusivity, and gender. To youth who are eager to learn more and understand the causes better. I am happy to announce here today that Sweden is about to enter into an agreement to support YECAP to strengthen the network. This support will act as a glue and facilitate greater coordination between the many inspiring and crucial activities planned. For example, by enabling the recruitment of 3 young UN volunteers from the region. We also hope that YECAP will build bridges between youth with different backgrounds, as well as open doors for youth to be able to influence and hold duty bearers accountable for creating a healthy planet for the prosperity of all. Sweden is excited to be part of YECAP and its future. The aim of the support is to ensure meaningful youth participation and convene youth dialogues for Stockholm+50, COP27, and the development of NDCs. To ensure a special focus on the most vulnerable young people, and in particular, indigenous youth in the region to participate in climate change activities, and to improve coordination and collaboration across youth actions, stakeholders, and organizations in the region. So together in our journey along the road to the Stockholm+50 conference in June, COP27, and other events, we hope to keep scaling up youth engagement, and we encourage stakeholders to participate in a meaningful and diverse way to address the underlying opportunities, obligations, and delivery of unfulfilled pledges. I would like to end by a quotation from a speech made by the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme at the conference that was held in Stockholm in 1972. The air we breathe is not the property of any one nation. We share it. The big oceans are not divided by national frontiers. They are common property. In the field of human environment, there is no individual future, neither for humans nor for nations. Our future is common. We must share it together. We must shape it together. Our future is common. We must share it together, and we must shape it together. This is as true today as it was in 1972. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful address, Ms. Anna Maria Altorp of the Swedish Embassy in Bangkok. And also thank you for joining us live here today. To echo her key points, youth from all walks of life are now talking and fighting for inclusivity and for the SDGs. As youth are not only the future, but also the present. And we are also very excited for Sweden's support to YICAP in bridging diverse youth and opportunities for meaningful youth participation. Once again, thank you very much, Ms. Anna Maria Altorp. Up next, we also have our next speaker joining us here today live. We have Ms. Elizabeth Gulugulu, the global focal point to the UNFCCC constituency of youth non-governmental organizations, or YOUNGO. Ms. Elizabeth, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I just want to thank the event organizers and the participants that have joined us today. The theme of the Stockholm+50 being a planet for the prosperity of all, our responsibility and our opportunity. Indeed, the climate change crisis has shown a lot of effects in our communities, making young people being more vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Before I even want to start talking about how young people have been contributing into the UNFCCC processes, I think it will also be fair and important to talk about the challenges that young people are facing into contributing into UNFCCC processes and implementing certain climate actions. In so many communities, the developing countries, we have young people that do not have access to Wi-Fi, access to internet, access to water, access to electricity. I think I am evidence of that. All these effects have affected the participation of young people. Just to add on to that, when we have these big conferences, which we call the Conference of the Parties, we have issues to do with accreditation. Each and every year, we are always worried where our young people, how are they going to take part into these discussions if they are not accredited? How are our young people going to take part in these discussions if they do not have the funding which will take them there? So these are some of the issues that young people have been facing over the years. And I'm glad that the constituency was created so that young people's voices can be heard through various channels. So I think most people who are here would want to know what is YOUNGO, what is the official Children and Youth constituency of the UNFCCC. This is a platform which constitutes of young people and also youth organizations all over the world. Young people below the ages of 25 years old can join YOUNGO. YOUNGO also has been contributing into various channels. It has a lot of working groups within YOUNGO that focus on each specific aspect of the climate change within the UNFCCC negotiations and events to ensure that perspectives of young people and future generations are taken into account in the multilateral decision and making process. I'm sure you all have heard about the Earth Summit in 1992, and the Earth Summit, the outcomes of the Earth Summit was the UNCBD, the NCCD, and the UNFCCC. ever since the young people started creating a momentum. And for the past 16 years, UNGO, the official children and youth constituency, has been playing its critical role, making sure that young people's voices are heard all around the world. Each and every year, it submits what we call the Global Youth Statement to the UNFCCC, and this is also supported and assisted in shaping out the negotiations, making sure that young people's voices are not only heard, but some of their recommendations can actually be implemented. So most people will be asking, how can I take part into UNGO? How can I participate in these processes? After this presentation, I'm going to put a link in the chat box, which will enable all of you guys below the ages of 35 years old to take part of this. Young people that constitute or that are part of UNGO, they've been doing certain initiatives, making sure that even young people within developing countries, they take part and they understand the UNFCCC processes, they understand the basics of climate change. They have been doing what we call the local conferences of youth each and every year. If you are from any country in the world, you can reach out to UNGO and see how best you can organize a local conference of youth. This local conference of youth feeds into what we call the regional conference of youth. So normally we have the regional conference of youth, Africa, Asia, you can name it. And we have what we call the Global Conference of Youth, which normally takes 3 days before the Conference of the Parties. Basically, the objectives of the Conference of Youth is to capacitate young people, making sure that young people, before they engage into these discussions, which could be a bit complicated, they actually get to understand and they are not shocked with what they'll be listening or what they'll be following. So we have a lot of initiatives that young people have been doing over the years. And please, our aim and our objective is to make sure that we leave no young person behind. So long you are interested with climate-related issues, you could be a policymaker, or you could be someone who is really interested in implementing issues or implementing projects on the ground. The platform is always open for you. We also need to understand that for us, meaningful youth engagement is merely not only consulting young people. Meaningful youth engagement is making sure that after consulting young people, we also take on board young people to make sure that they implement the projects. After that, young people should also have the opportunity to take part in the monitoring and evaluation of the projects. So without saying more, without adding more to all these great speeches from different speakers, I want to thank you for the platform to speak about the constituency, the constituency of the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change, which is known as UNGO. Please, please, please join UNGO. I'll share the link and invite your friends to be part of the constituency. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Elizabeth Gulugulu from UNGO. And from her, we have learned that young people are indeed more vulnerable to the increasing negative effects of climate change and have been experiencing increasing challenges in participation and contribution as well. The youth are experiencing issues in also making their voices heard. UNGO acts as a platform for young people and children who fight for climate change through various working groups. It is open to youth and has been contributing through its various local, regional, and global conferences of youth. And in joining UNGO, let us leave no young person behind. Again, thank you very much, Ms. Elizabeth Gulugulu. Up next, we would like to have Ms. Sayyida Hadika Jamshed, Climate Change Specialist, Ministry of Climate Change of Pakistan, to share her opening remarks. Over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction. I think I was supposed to present a presentation. Thank you so much. I will not be adding to the great interventions made by the previous speakers and the importance they have put on how youth is important in implementing the goals of climate change. If you're moving towards implementation, you cannot actually ignore such a huge segment of the society. And coming very specific to the work we are doing with UNDP on youth and climate change and the current work on green jobs and transitioning towards a green economy. Next slide, please. So the impacts of climate change are extended to labor productivity and also employment around the world. As per International Labour Organization, by 2030, as per International Organization, by 2030, the warming climate will lead to loss of around 80 million jobs, full-time jobs, with an economic loss of around 3 trillion. So the major component when we look at decarbonizing economy, as we came up with green jobs. Actually, UNDP supported Ministry of Climate Change, and green jobs are to integrate green jobs in our policy making and to move towards implementation of it. And to encounter all these problems stated above, it is already like if you look at Pakistan, we are already struggling economy, and green jobs not only present solutions for the circular and sustainable growth, but it also has potential for further minimizing GHG emissions of Pakistan and achieving the goals of our NDCs. So the shift of green economy should also be based on, for a country like Pakistan struggling economically as well, is through just transition. And the approach depends on realizing the fact that the goal of green economy must contribute towards social inclusion as well, gender equality as well, and poverty reduction as well. So we cannot look at climate change just from the lens of climate change, but also from other development issues Pakistan is facing. Next slide, please. Realizing the need, and I would say I have to thank UNDP when we were revising our NDCs back in 2021. UNDP supported Ministry of Climate Change in making the NDCs more inclusive of youth, and we did a survey and a report, and a set of policy recommendations were developed by UNDP to be incorporated in the revised NDCs. And while we were doing that, we also revised our national climate change policy. So if you look at Pakistan NDCs and national climate change policy, we have a clear commitments for developing green skills and also defined nature-based solution, green livelihood opportunities as one of the guiding principles to achieve climate commitments. And Pakistan national climate change policies has actions on capacity building, where Pakistan commits to 20 actions to enhance local green skills through training, information sharing, international expert engagement. It can be through formal curriculums and also strengthening research and development. And for Pakistan NDCs, there was a high priority on adaptation and mitigation initiatives from energy sector, transport sector, land use and forestry sectors. And it will significantly contribute to countries' adaptive capacity, including creation of green jobs. And within the NDCs, if you look at it, we have a separate chapter on gender and youth that focuses on commitment to enhance their participation in future green economy. And it's last time in the national climate change policy, there was also a separate chapter on gender, but it wasn't integrated with other sectors of adaptation and mitigation. And also in our last NDCs, there was no reference of youth and gender. So this time we tried to make it more cross-cutting, and we tried that all the sectors are integrated within these two thematic areas. Pakistan has also a national they are in the process of national adaptation plan, and under that as well, we are focusing on youth and gender, and focusing on how can we make them economically empowered and an agent of change in future and achieving the climate change goal. And all these policies reflect that government agendas and commitments for the better future for the next generation is in place. And the Ministry of Climate Change and Pakistan is fully committed to take this agenda forward with our youth in mind. And to make sure that these commitments are not just on the paper, but also on reality, we can see the change. Ministry of Climate Change has made substantive progress for green jobs creation. after the pandemic, there was a launch of Green Stimulus Package, which focused on providing daily wage worker, especially women and youth, to earn livelihood through green jobs in a dignified way. Under these, the two flagship projects of Minister of Climate Change, 10 billion tsunami tree and King in Pakistan was used, and 200,000 jobs were created. MUCC has also initiated a number of interventions to create green jobs, like management of protected areas, also in ecotourism under protected areas, and as mentioned before, nature-based solution, ecosystem restoration remains the heart of it for creating these jobs. With these recent adoption of technology-based mitigation policies, we like alternative energy, renewable energy policy we had in 2019, National Electric Vehicle Policy was announced in 2020. So all these policies are focusing and aiming towards for call for action to enhance economic empowerment and keeping the green economy opportunities in mind. So this is like my final slide, and this is the work we are doing currently with UNDP, and we are looking forward to explore more sectors where green jobs can be created, where we have almost 70% of the population comes in the youth bracket. So we do realize as a government as well, and also as a policy maker, that how important and significant it is to keep youth in mind, and how important role they can play in future for the implementation of these policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, Ms. Sayida Hadika Jamshid. From her, we have learned that transition to green jobs is a growing need of the hour, and there's a need to align policies with long-term decarbonization pathways. Pakistan's national climate change policy has been putting forward a lot of actions and policies for better use of resources and adaptation, mitigation, and more. The Ministry of Climate Change also focuses on green stimulus initiatives, ecosystem protection and restoration, and other projects. Finally, from her talk, we have to include a wide range of sectors, actors, and also stakeholders in shifting towards green economy. Up next, we proceed to our youth keynote session. Let us call in Ms. Barsha Lekhi, member of the Asia Indigenous Youth Platform. Over to you, Ms. Barsha.
Namaskar and good morning, everyone. It is my honor to share and address the immensely great cohort of purpose-driven individuals. There are many things that I want to share with you all, and I'll do it one by one, of course. Beginning with, I would like to share my motivation that led me or made me do what I'm doing. Basically, how I began this journey of activism and engagement in climate change action. It was in 2011. It's been a decade already. So I was struggling to find a course to pursue for my undergrad. And at that time, in 2011, climate change was an emerging topic, at least in my country, Nepal, it was. With time, I realized that climate change is not age neutral or gender neutral. The crisis caused by climate change is going to be extreme, and we are going to experience greater impacts and amplify existing challenges of youth possessing unique threats to livelihoods, employment, health, and safety. Looking at climate change through the lens of different age groups, the way in which various forms of inequality often operate together and exacerbate each other, it is clear that climate crisis or climate change risks are acute for youth, especially youth of indigenous communities. The traditional knowledge and cultural practices and values have profound spiritual relationships with indigenous peoples, and the ancestral indigenous knowledge and practices needs to be preserved for sustainability and to fight back climate change with a holistic approach. I, as an indigenous youth myself, and I know that indigenous knowledge is at the verge of extinct. If we don't preserve it or we do not document it, we will lose them, and we'll lose them forever. At this very point of time, I grilled myself how I, as an individual, can contribute to tackle this problem. I realized we need education, awareness campaigns, we need capacity building and capacity strengthening projects, be it organizational level or at individual level regarding climate change in each and every pocket in the nation and in the world. And this is how I started my career in activism and engagement in various organizations working for climate change and environment. Today, in this platform, as I talk about youth engagement in climate action, empowering them, it is essential to capacitate them to be youth leaders and not just efficiently participate in decision-making process, but become the decision maker and help introduce youth-friendly policies in the state. We should focus on attempting one step at a time, one activity at a time, however, prioritizing the list of activities and achieving our goals. Youth obviously can play key dimensions in shaping the society towards combating climate change, and youth with dynamic age group have huge potential to come up with creative ideas associated with new technologies, introducing new technologies to solve this problem. Engagement of youth is a necessity. Without them, any decision or any policy will be incomplete, as many of our speakers said it earlier. Now, I would like to share my climate change action, like my climate action, what I did. First was involving in different climate change projects and institutions like UNDP and UNEP Climate Change Partnership Program. And second was engaging myself as an individual effort, engaging myself to support documentation and publishing videos and promoting via making posts in social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Talking about working in institutions, I worked in a Nepal Federation of Indigenous Nationalities, NEFIN, a climate change partnership program where I implemented the project capacity building of young indigenous people in the field of climate change in coordination with the District Coordination Council, where we conducted awareness raising campaigns and trainings among young indigenous people to educate and capacitate them towards climate change issues. It is very important for us to educate them, to make them leaders and to advocate and to lobby for climate change action. So I was also associated with a United Nations Development Program, GEF Small Grants, UNDP, GEF SGP, as their National Indigenous Peoples Fellow, where I coordinated with multiple Indigenous peoples communities of Nepal, including youth groups. I planned and conducted numerous workshops, supported Indigenous traditional doctors of Nepal by introducing solar dryer, which is a renewable technology used for several purposes. I can proudly say that this initiative, this intervention was one of the success stories, how we helped in the livelihood of Indigenous community by introducing technology and thereby mitigate climate change issues concerning them. I also participated in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC Conference of Parties, COP25, held in Madrid, Spain, where I shared my voice regarding effective involvement of Indigenous youth and Indigenous peoples in different pavilions and platforms. I shared how important it is to incorporate the voice of youth of Indigenous communities. Recently, I collaborated with AIPP, Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact, and UNDP Bangkok to implement a project with youth engagement. And I'm not boasting or bragging it here in this platform, but the fact that we did receive a good response and good feedback from the donor agency and the viewers regarding the project execution exclusively because we believe in the power of young cohorts and the power of youth. I sincerely believe that when youth in every country across the globe engage in climate action collectively with unity, we will definitely bring a constructive prospect, creating interventions that are environment friendly, thereby helping combat climate crisis. I take this platform to call out all the youth worldwide to come into climate action, be it institutionally or individually, like I did, and give justice to our Mother Earth. I urge you all to contribute in our battle against climate crisis. Join your hands in the movement of reviving and making our Earth resilient. At last, I would like to thank the organizers who invited me to share my experience in this dialogue. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barsha Lekhi, for your remarks. Indeed, we have learned that we really have to focus on capacity building and capacity strengthening initiatives, along with creative and innovative means of engaging and involving youth. The voice of young Indigenous people in climate change, with personal experiences unique to them, have to be highlighted, with Indigenous traditions and values keeping nature as spiritual guides. And in joining our hands in the movement, thank you, Ms. Barsha, once again, for using every fiber of your being for talking about what you really believe in. Up next, we have Mr. Krib Sitatani to share more on UNDP's Climate Promise 2.0 and our journey beyond COP26. Once again, we are very pleased to invite Mr. Krib Sitatani, Country Coordinator, Climate Promise of the UNDP in Asia and the Pacific. Mr. Krib, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. So my name is Krib Sitatani. I'm the Country Coordinator to the Climate Promise and Scala program here in Bangkok for the Asia and the Pacific region. So basically what I want to talk about is a little bit different from all the previous speakers and high-level remarks. I'm going to bring it down a little bit to the technical side of climate change and what's going on and what we can really do about it moving forward as well. So as you can see in the slide here, this one is basically one of the diagram produced by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is basically the scientific body for climate change negotiation as part of the climate change negotiation with the UNFCCC. Well, this came from their recent publication, specifically looking at climate adaptation. So this diagram on the right is the various possible future of our climate resilient development pathways. So the lines across here are different options we can take moving forward into our future. So as you can see on the blue dot here, right here, is where we are at the moment. The projection of these scenarios run into the next 100 years, the 2100s. So our options are enormous and with full potential and also full of risk in terms of what we can do. How we go about it will also dictate how our future holds. What I mean by that is what type of engagement we have with not just amongst ourselves, but with the wider community, including inclusivity with new stakeholders, including indigenous groups, vulnerable groups such as women, and people with disabilities, or other vulnerable groups as well. Because what we need is essentially a way to move forward meaningfully and also really engage across the wide spectrum of people everywhere. And so we can't just look at a typical climate action or a typical course of action that limits consideration and engagement. That's also one of the key messages from the IPCCC. Next up, I want to show you a little bit of, what the risks are in our region. So looking at some selected cities that the IPCC looked at, the key risks across both Central Asia, West Asia, South Asia, East Asia are widespread, specifically on floods, specifically on sea level rise for some cities. These are more for the case of cities located near coastal zones, such as Mumbai, Dhaka, Guangzhou, and Jakarta, Ho Chi Minh City. What I illustrated here is also Bangkok, where I am based right now, and other risks as well, such as heat, due to urban area or more extreme rain or droughts or cyclones and such. So the risks are evident. It's going to continue to be of either increasing risk due to the level of greenhouse gas emission we produce moving forward, or our reduction of it. And we also have to take action on both to reduce climate impact and impact felt by humans and the environment, and also trying to reduce the cause of climate change. So we're at a crossroad right now. So I also want to really point out one of the biggest issue for our Pacific Islands, our neighbors within the region. They are at the highest risk of being basically coastally inundated within the next century. This is next century. So basically this is a very real risk they are facing. And we have to take action on both mitigation and adaptation and build resilience for them as well as our future. This is not a individual problem, it's a collective problem, and it also needs a collective action. And I want to take a moment, which when I was reviewing some of the IPCC report, I came upon this quote that kind of really stuck with me, and I think fits well into our youth and dialogue here, is with ongoing global warming, today's children in South and Southeast Asia will witness increased losses in coastal settlements and infrastructure due to flooding caused by unavoidable sea level rise, with very high losses in East Asian cities. The reason that stuck with me is because it really nails home that this issue that we're trying to address here, climate change, is intergenerational. It's not just me. It's our children, our children's children, and the impacts are coming. The losses are coming. It's going to happen. What we do now will dictate what happens in the next decade or next century. So with you as youth activists, youth entrepreneurs, this is really important to you, but it is really important to all of us. So that is something that I think is really, for me, was one of the emotional point in reading the report. And sorry, so in response, well, right before COP back in 2019, UNDP launched the Climate Promise Initiative, which we aim to support 100 countries around the world. In the Asia Pacific region, we actually supported 27 countries. And of that, we have supported about 20 countries so far that have submitted their nationally determined contribution, or essentially their climate pledges to take action by 2030. And we also are in parallel, we also do a lot of work in the adaptation space. Specifically for this, we have supported countries to do national adaptation plans, which is their plans to address climate impacts at the national level. So far, there are 5 countries within the Asia Pacific region that have submitted the National Adaptation Plan, or NAPs, and 20 countries that have submitted their second generation NDCs, or nationally determined contribution. So what does this mean in terms of really the climate ambition so far in the region? About 80% have increased their mitigation side, which is the NDC, generally understood as the NDC. There's part of it is also on the adaptation side. There's an increase in ambition in the adaptation. What does increasing in both adaptation and mitigation means? In this sense, we look at one, basically if they have increased the type of greenhouse gas they consider for reduction, or if they have expanded to their economy-wide reduction, or if the targets have increased. And also on the adaptation side, we look at how they are looking at their strategy, how they're looking at what they're trying to do, what sector their coverage is, what areas of work they're trying to do on adaptation, if they laid out plans or not, and how they try to address that. So these are some things that UNDP and our partners have been working on with countries at national level, subnational level, and local level as well. So a little bit of an interesting tidbit that we want to share a little bit from this second generation of NDCs that we have supported, including Pakistan and other countries as well. So what I want to share here is the comparison from the global level. Back in the first generation, there were about 86% of global NDCs that submitted that were relatively considered in terms of youth consideration. This has grown to 97% in the second generation. So, but I want to dig down a little bit into the regional dimension of this. So looking at our regional focus, there are about 60% of the supported countries under the Climate Promise that reference youth. What does referencing youth means in this context? Referencing youth is essentially, you know, a range from an engagement with youth at the consultation level to really aiming to address youth issues. This can vary widely at the moment. So in response to that, UNDP is also launching a new guidance, which is aiming to really, the title, Aim Higher, Elevating Meaningful Youth Engagement for Climate Action. This will complement how to really foster meaningful engagement with youth and youth communities and entrepreneurs as well a little bit. So that's part of what we're trying to do in response to these engagement as well. So moving forward from COP26 to COP27, UNDP is launching our next chapter of the Climate Promise, basically from pledge to impact. So in the first Climate Promise, we help support countries to formulate these national commitments or NDCs. What we're aiming to do with the second chapter of Climate Promise is really taking these pledges to take action. There are three main pillars of this. One is to increase scale and speed of these climate pledges and try to accelerate the implementation process. Second is to amplifying ambition. What this means is really looking at how to align different components of the ambition, including mitigation, adaptation, and the synchronization of them. And lastly, and I think here is really important to know that we want to really ensure lasting inclusivity. This includes, you know, a systematic approach to engaging with different stakeholders and empowering them to really take action for our climate resilient future. So that's a quick summary of what's going on within UNDP, and we also have other programs and projects ongoing at the country level and also at the regional level that is working on climate action. So I have one last slide and that I almost forgot. So the road ahead is there are three main COPs, the Conference of Parties. What we often refer to as COP is the Climate Change COP, which is happening in November this year in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. We also are having two other COPs that are also relevant, really important to us. The first one being COP15 on biodiversity, which is happening in Kunming, China. And in early part of May, we'll be on COP15 on desertification in Côte d'Ivoire. And we must not forget this, the Stockholm+50 event, which is happening in June in Stockholm as well. And with that, thank you.
That was a very, very amazing and informative speech, Mr. Kribs Sitatani. Thank you once again for highlighting the informative yet shocking climate implications from the IPCC reports in much detail. This technical sharing has helped us understand more about an interconnected course of climate action, and we really have to take urgent and concrete action in mitigation and adaptation in the form of interconnected collective action. In addressing climate change as a collective problem, we have to understand that the phenomena and its impacts are intergenerational. It will indeed affect you, me, and everybody. And finally, we have learned from Mr. Cribb that in moving forward, we have to transition from pledge to impact in scaling up and speeding inclusive solutions. Those were some really amazing messages and insights shared this morning by all of our speakers. Once again, thank you very much for gracing our event with your presence. So we are about 300 participants in this Zoom session. Please hold your smiles for a few more seconds. Are we done with the photo? All right, we are done with our photo taking. Thank you very much, everyone, for patiently holding all of your beautiful smiles and for being with us in the opening session. And now we will be taking a short break and we will be resuming our session at 1 p.m. GMT +7. Hope to see you again later this afternoon.
Session today and the next 30 minutes and what we're going to follow. I would like to welcome the three panelists for today. A very good morning, early morning to all of you, and thank you for joining in so early in the morning and being here with us. Our three panelists for today are very special to me. The first panelist for today is Ms. Fleur Newman. She is the head of the Gender and Ace and Youth Unit at the UNFCCC. The second panelist is Zihan, who's from China and has been leading on the COI16 Global Youth Summit at COP26. And our final panelist for today is Marie-Claire Graf, a very good friend and my colleague, who's going to be speaking here on behalf of the Climate Youth Negotiator Program. Welcome, Fleur, Marie-Claire, and Zihan. It's an absolute pleasure to be moderating this panel with you. Very, very special to see my worlds colliding in this manner and coming together. So before we get started, I would like you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how young people are engaging within the UNFCCC processes based on your experiences and sort of what you've done so far. Let's begin with Fleur, and then you can hand it over to Zihan, who can hand it over to Marie-Claire, and then we come back to Mike. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Hita, and it's great to be here. It's always nice to start the day with an event like this one, and great to be on this panel. I am the lead of the Action for Climate Empowerment, Youth Engagement and Gender and Climate Change work at the Secretariat in the context of the intergovernmental process under the UNFCCC. And I'm formerly a corporate lawyer who worked in Australia in the areas of energy and sustainability. And I would say there are quite a few different ways that young people can and do engage under the UNFCCC process, from being observers, which is a name given to organisations and individuals in the process who are not representing parties, and can be part of an observer constituency, such as YOUNGO, and also being active members of policy and technical bodies under the process, to being fully fledged members of national delegations. That was my quick intro. So handing over to Zihan to take the floor.
Thank you very much, and very good morning here in London. Thanks very much also for Hita for organizing this very meaningful dialogue. To introduce myself, my name is Zihan, and I'm from China. And last year, I had the privilege of working with Hita MC, but also many other colleagues from YOUNGO, to bring forward the Global Youth Voice to COP26 through our COI16 Global Youth Statement. We'll share a little bit more about that later on, but essentially the Global Youth Statement was an unprecedented climate policy document that was written by youth, all youth, and presented to major stakeholders in UNFCCC negotiations at Glasgow last year. We're very proud to be able to gather the views of more than 40,000 young people on a range of climate issues that matter to them, and bring them directly to negotiations where they can have an effect on the negotiation process outcomes, And I'm very excited to share about this with my panelists today. Over to them.
Yeah, thank you so much. Super excited. Hello and welcome from my side as well. So I started my journey as a climate activist on a national level and then joined my first international conference. And I was so frustrated because I didn't get absolutely anything. I was in Bonn at COP23 for 2 weeks, and I was very frustrated. And yeah, some younger colleagues kept me in this space, and I came back, and I had a journey of understanding better what is going on. And then in 2019, I was asked to negotiate actually for the government of Switzerland on topics of action for climate empowerment, what is under FLIR, but also capacity building, gender and technology related issues. And there I really saw that while we want to sit at the table, there is also specific training needed to actually be empowered to sit there and actually bring something meaningful to the table, because it's a lot of pressure if you're sitting there and then you should raise your card and say something. And then also throughout the last 2 years, where I was global focal point together with Peter for the youth constituency, I just saw like how many young people there are who really understand the negotiations. And there's a bottleneck of youth engagement, that we are only seen as the observers, we are seen as something outside, but we are not really able to contribute at the table and make the decisions ourselves. And also through the Global Youth Statement, we really saw what potential there is to not only bring young people there, but actually really move the negotiations one step ahead. And that's also why, together with Hita and 2 others, we have been setting up the Youth Climate Negotiator program, basically to train young people and really bring them into the negotiation as a valuable asset. And yeah, with this really hopefully move the negotiation one step ahead towards more climate just actions. And with this, over to you, Hita.
Thank you so much to all 3 of you. And with that, let's get started into the depths of the discussion. I'm going to change the order a little bit this time. So starting with Zihan. Zihan, you mentioned you were leading on the Global Youth Statement, where you got voices of 40,000 young people. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looked like and what youth engagement in YOUNGO can really look like, and how young people can be a part of this movement?
Definitely. So really happy to share how throughout the process of, in fact, coming up with the Global Youth Statement and presenting it at COP26, it was a really constructive learning process for me and my colleagues working on this, because we were able to see, first of all, the extent and the intensity with which young people cared about policy advocacy on such a high level. When we were drafting the Global Youth Statement, we set up a team of around 100 volunteers, actually looking through the policy demands and proposals provided by so many young people around the world. I have to admit that trying to reconcile some of them into a single unified document was a challenge, given the range of positions held by young people around the world, which are in fact quite diverse. But I think that also speaks to the expertise and the dedication by young people around the world to actually make a difference in some of these areas that matter to them. So just a brief introduction, for example, the types of policy demands that young people came up with included ones that were directly relevant to UNFCCC negotiation tracks, for example, ones ensuring a just energy transition, other policy demands on the need to finalize Article 6, but also policy demands that perhaps were sometimes left outside the usual agendas, but remain important young people believe in discussing. For example, ones on food and agriculture, sustainable cities and communities that I think young people really wanted to see discussed. I think the main impact of the Global Youth Statement when we're presenting it at COP was we could see the extent to which all stakeholders, including party and non-party stakeholders, actually attributed to the Global Youth Voice. I had a privilege of working, for example, with both youth advocates as well as negotiators that belong to national delegations, of pushing the Global Youth Statement from various angles to make sure that not only was this Global Youth Statement kind of accessible to and relevant to the public in general, but also that when in the process of negotiations themselves, that party negotiators were able to take this document as a reference, as a basis for their negotiation outcomes, and reflect some of these demands that young people wanted to see at the table in the actual outcome itself, in the Glasgow Climate Pact itself. So I think this was a really impactful process, and one of the first, in fact, the first time that we were able to incorporate such an inclusive extent of young people's voice into the negotiation system. And we really hope that going forward, it is also something that we could continue the momentum.
Thank you so much for that. It's really nice to see how the different kinds of movements have grown outside within the UN, but also outside, and really putting that together, getting those demands in one place. So with that, I'm actually going to lead on to Flo. You said there are different modes of engagement, like for example, YOUNGO. And YOUNGO, of course, has seen a growth in partnership, more and more young people coming on as well to be a part of the movement who are also keen within the UN framework. Have you seen any changes on how this youth engagement has affected the UN negotiations? And if yes, what do you think that looks like?
I think definitely there's been, particularly in the last few years, we've seen, and I think it's just the points that Zihan has just made about the fact that the contribution is so targeted, and it's quite deliberate to speak to the things that are happening under the UNFCCC process, which is very important because there's so much happening under the UNFCCC process. If you're not targeted, it's very hard to make inroads. And I think the Global Youth Statement was a really important document, and it was reflected in the decision. So there's that, but I think it's also the point about the need to hold governments accountable, and that's an important role that we all have. But young people have been doing so in a way that is very visible and in different ways. So I think this is the diversity of youth voices is also important, because it also reflects what happens in the negotiations. Every country's circumstances are different communities, different environments, different social norms. So it's a reflection of what's happening in the international process, and that's why it's so important that an organisation like YOUNGO is as diverse as it is, to ensure that diverse voices are heard. And I think there's also been a stronger engagement in the sort of institutional bodies and processes with young people. So there's lots of different ways I think that's happened. But I also think that this is a general thing also of people more broadly understanding the need to engage. So it's an important turning point, I think.
Thank you so much, Fleur. I think some very thoughtful points given there to really see how the momentum, the movement, the narrative is also sort of impacting the decisions and how the process has been progressing over the years. Marie-Claire, on that note, you mentioned about the Youth Negotiator Program, and you mentioned about barriers that you felt yourself as a young negotiator within the space. Can you delve a little bit more into your experiences as a young person when you were negotiating? What did that look like? And how did you sort of overcome the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really like that we're talking about the challenges, because I think there are so many, and it's really important to tackle them if we want to really advance the youth engagement and really sitting on the tables. So, I mean, first, when I got asked, I mean, while I've been demanding that young people sit at the table, the first time when I got the call from the office of the president, I actually rejected the call, because I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm not ready. I don't understand. I'm not empowered enough to actually do this, which was actually very shocking to me, that even like while I'm asking for it, I myself have been declining the offer. And then basically they told me if I'm not going to negotiate on this, then the topics won't be covered by the Swiss delegation, which of course would have been a pity. So they twisted me around, and I accepted. And of course it was very challenging to kind of get everything ready, to write the position paper, to write down the potential negotiation avenues, because again, like first I have always been demanding that things are happening, and now I have to kind of bring it into one position paper. Which can also have been approved by Switzerland and our grouping, of course. But actually, to compare the amount of pressure, like being in the room, this is like just completely different. Like then really sitting at the table and then basically making your intervention. So you have to put up your country card, and then the chair will ask you to deliver your statement. While I have ever been prepared, for some reason, it was very, very challenging to actually like make this statement, because I was afraid that what if I'm not saying the right thing? What if there's a lot of questions I maybe can't answer? What if others maybe don't like the intervention? And I mean, this is the whole thing about the negotiations, right? So I just really saw what different challenges they are. And for me, it was not the biggest issue, but I know that for many other young people, it's even a big issue to actually get the funding to come to the conference. So my travel was, because I was a negotiator for Switzerland, my travel and everything was covered by the government. So we really see that there is a challenge when it comes to the training on the technical side, but also the soft skill side. We really see that there are some systemic barriers when it comes to funding, or also getting some funding while you're there for the food, accommodation, and so on. But then also really having the network. And I felt sometimes a little bit lonely, you know, because there were not so many young people in the negotiation tables. So you're kind of hanging out with the other generations, which is of course amazing, and I learned so much, but I think it would have been really nice to have a network of young people who are kind of sharing this or having the same learnings and the same challenges, and also being able to exchange and also build a network across countries. Basically the community was YOUNGO, where there are of course also some youth negotiators, but would have really loved to kind of see a little bit more support there. And I think one other challenge I really would like to mention is really the cultural shift which needs to happen. When I was negotiating, there was an older gentleman from a European country came up to me and wanted to talk to the Swiss delegation, and I told him, yeah, let's have a seat and let's talk, right? I have time. And then he's like, no, he wants to talk to the delegation itself. I'm like, yeah, I'm part of the delegation. So he clearly couldn't understand that a young female lady can actually sit at the table and negotiate. And for me, this was the most challenging part, to see that while we are fighting so much, while we're preparing ourselves, and he was not even there when I did the intervention, so he had just no clue. So basically he judged just from my appearance and for my age, and basically have like this ageism, and this can be really, I mean, first I was like shocked, right? And then I was like, okay, well, I mean, this is how it is. So there is so many different levels we have to work on. There are more systemic ones we have to overcome, but then there are also like more personal ones where you have to empower ourselves. And I think also it's really important that there is really this from young person to young person training. I got a mentor who was negotiating some nuclear treaties, which is absolutely brilliant. So he was retired and he could help me a lot. But it would have been also very helpful to have like a young person sometimes I can talk to. So you see there are a lot of challenges, a lot of learnings, and there's also basically the basis for the Climate Youth Negotiator program on really supporting young people to go easier to all of these struggles.
Thank you so much, Marie-Claire. Extremely helpful. And with that, actually coming back to Zihan, really talking about ageism, the structural barriers, whether it's funding barriers, whether it's really just putting through your voices just because you're a young person and getting that accepted through different levels. How has it been for you in your personal experience, but also looking at YOUNGO and then the conferences of youth and the different versions of the conferences of youth? Why do you think they're necessary, and how do they sort of help channel these youth voices into a process which is then recognizing the importance of young people?
Yeah, definitely. And I think to begin with, I think it's important to recognize the contribution that the Global Youth Statement has made in really unifying young people's demands and giving young people a concrete set of objectives and policy demands, which they can then use as the basis for interacting with other stakeholders at UNFCCC. I admit that, for a lot of young people, including myself, being at the first time at COP, it's not always the easiest to engage with all sorts of stakeholders. But I think having that Global Youth Statement really made it easier for us to engage in meaningful exchange and discourse with some of the other, for example, party delegations in bilaterals that we organized. Because I think it does prove to these delegations, one of whom probably was mentioned by Marie-Claire, the importance of young people being at the table, but also the contributions that young people can make if they were at the table. I think it presents, the statement presents a very positive outlook on the contributions that young people could make if they were given a seat. And I think that is very important if we were to make a solid case for having young people at the table. I would like to just maybe give a concrete example of how, the challenges, but also the opportunities that we were faced with when lobbying for the Global Youth Statement. So as we know, besides kind of presenting it to major policy stakeholders, what we also did for much of the remainder of COP was to actually directly engage with some of these delegations at their own pavilions and see how supportive or in what ways they could support youth demands through their own national context and circumstances, which I think is absolutely crucial to the spirit of the UNFCCC. And I think we met a range of policy response spectrums, including from countries that were clearly very supportive of youth engagement, even via their own national delegations through the engagement of young people, and delegations that were not so much delegations that kind of wanted to engage with us, but didn't really know how to, or didn't really know what they could gain from doing so. And I think there was definitely a degree of that level of tokenism at play when we come to engaging with these negotiators. Fortunately, though, I think what YOUNGO, and these youth organizations represented in YOUNGO's network have done is they have given us a good platform for launching some of our policy demands at that level, making sure that we are not just kind of presenting our demands, but making sure that we can have meaningful exchange about our demands. So when we were talking to some of the delegations, we were actually asked the technicals of some of our demands, much to our surprise. For example, when we call for a funding facility, for example, for loss and damage, how do young people actually think we could achieve this within the current context? And also more general questions like, for example, what is the situation of young people in a particular country when it comes to climate action? So I think it is through engaging with these negotiators and other stakeholders on these issues that we can really see the power of YOUNGO, of young people coming together and offering them a united international, but also youth-led and youth-oriented response to some of these questions. And I'm really happy to have been part of that fight and that initiative.
Thank you, Zihan, for sharing those experiences. It's also good to see how, from everything that you see on the outside, what happens behind the scenes when you're engaging, when you're actually having these sort of conversations. And on that note, I'd actually move it to Fleur, who's sort of the more neutral party as the secretariat here. In your sort of experience working with young people, but also working on the gender aspect, how have you seen sort of the participation of young women, but also how the acceptance or how that has gone? Like Mary Claire gave an example of herself being a young woman and what that sort of turned out to be. How has it been either in your personal experiences or in interactions that you've seen for young people or young women to be a part of the processes, whether as observers, whether as party delegates, or even within the secretariat? How do you think that has been changing over the years?
Thank you. And yes, I was seeing that conversation that Marie-Claire was describing. And I think this is also the nature of these negotiations, is that you have a range of ages, but also levels of experience. So even not all older people are experienced negotiators, and not all young people are not experienced negotiators. So I think this is also, but there is a lot that gets done simply by appearance, and that there's a lot of gender stereotypes about who leaders are and who senior people are in a delegation, and there are, and that is something that I think has changed somewhat in the time that I've been at the Secretariat, and in part that's because of the focus through the gender and climate change agenda item under the COP, and things like us reporting on the gender composition of delegations. We've recently added age to that, because what we did see was that there is this perception of a link between age and leadership. And also because what we saw was that gender equality was, parity was achieved in the younger age group, but quickly declined over age. So, one of the things here is having data to sort of be able to pinpoint some of the problems that people are experiencing anecdotally. It's important to have that data, and that's one of the things that I think has changed things. But and there has been a night school for women negotiators for 11 years, and that was in part in response to a need that was identified, because often, whether they're young or not, women negotiators who are brought into delegations are often brought in at quite possibly at the last moment, quite possibly without any background. And so it was really important in order for women to actually have a meaningful engagement in the process to be able to support them. And so the Women Delegates Fund is not only a travel fund to support women from least developed countries and small island developing states and other developing countries, but it's also a capacity building program. And I think I know that there's been lessons learned from that process that have informed the Youth Negotiator program. And I think, but it is important to recognise that it is not a problem that has been overcome. So we are still addressing gender issues and more broadly, diversity more broadly in the process, and building capacity is an important element of that. It's not that people don't have skills, it's that the COP process is a very complex process and very particular. So you do actually need to have some training which is specific to it. But I do see that there has been change, and I think that we just need to keep persisting.
Absolutely. I think it is important to notice the small wins and to see how far we've come, but at the same time, look at the big picture and say we're not close yet and we need to continue fighting the good fight, or doing whatever we're doing to bridge the gap, whether it's gender parity, whether it's youth inclusion, whether it's gender climate action and advocating for change. So thank you so much for sharing your insights on that. Marie-Claire, based on everything that you've heard so far, and also sort of just building up on the training program that Fleur mentioned, which is the night school for women delegates, can you just delve a little bit more into what is next? What is the Youth Negotiator program going to look like? And how can young people engage? What is next? And what should they be looking out for?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Fleur, I was also part of the night school and kind of get the training to see what skills I needed. And yeah, there in fact, as mentioned, these two barriers. So one, the system is not yet ready for really supporting strong and effective young people in the negotiations, but then also the personal element, right? Like how can a person be empowered? And this is exactly what the Climate Youth Negotiator program is building on. And it's also building on the experience, the 11 years of experience of the Women Delegate Fund and many other initiatives which are already out there, and really trying to harvest what is here, and then also to unite it and provide it to the young people. So on the building strong and effective negotiators and really like the personal level, we are developing currently a 6 months online program and also some in-person modules on really focusing on two aspects. One, the technical understanding, because this is key to really make a contribution, to really bring forward also what Zihan, what you mentioned in the Global Youth Statement, to bring our ideas to the table. But then even if we understand the negotiations and the technical aspects very well, but we are not personally empowered to actually raise this card, to actually speak up when we meet the people, it's not going to happen. So there also needs to be a very personal leadership element into it. And so it's really like the leadership and the negotiation training, trying to cover both and trying to find the right mix to have empowered young people. And then the second part here is really about the network. As mentioned, the COPs can be a lonely space while you're there with thousands of people. And that's also why the Climate Youth Negotiator program is developing or establishing a youth network, a youth community for negotiators, where we can also really talk about our unique challenges, but also how we can overcome them. And also, of course, hope to talk about some of our successes in the negotiations. And then on the other side, while we need to have these empowered young people who are bringing to the table, the system also needs to change and really support the young people. So on one side, as already mentioned, it is really the travel grant funding to remove barriers of participation, because as also Fleur, you mentioned with the women, very often then they would come in the last minute, and then you have to stay somewhere very far away because you can't afford the hotels or you can't afford the flights, you're coming late. And this is absolutely crucial. If you're coming late to the negotiation, or if you're staying like 1 or 2 hours away from the venue, you're going to miss out on the most fundamental parts. You're going to miss out on the negotiation, but also on this very important moments in between, before the negotiations, where you actually make a lot of negotiations happen. So this is really important to support them adequately. And then yeah, also as mentioned, we need a cultural shift, we need a mindset shift, and how we're perceiving. This is what UFLR and also the Women Delegate Fund worked on for the last decades, on really empowering women to the level that they are seen as an equal element on the table, as an equal negotiator. And we have to achieve the same for young people. And not only see like young people are out there on the streets and protesting, and I'm doing this as well, and YOUNGO is doing this as well, and the youth negotiator can do this as well. And I think it's very important to have these elements, but it's also very important to see them at the table and really convince governments. And this, I can just talk also from the Swiss perspective. We have been asking the Swiss delegation for years to have youth negotiator, and we always got the same response. We don't need you. This was basically the response. We don't need a young person in the delegation. And then when I was a negotiator, they were actually very happily surprised. And now they have actually basically have a permanent young person who is actually negotiating, who's not just there like a youth delegate who is there for the social media accounts and for the side events, but actually negotiating and getting the mandate, and also risking a little bit of having of an uncertainty. What if we take like a young person? I have been calling the government out quite frankly on TV and in the news, but taking this risk to really overcome these barriers. So this is what the Climate Youth Negotiator Program is aiming to do. We are launching on Earth Day on 22nd of April at the EarthX conference in Dallas in Texas in the United States. And we are kickstarting the program also with the upcoming ESPYs in Bonn, and then really working throughout the second half of the year to then have the first cohort of youth negotiators for COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. But also afterwards, this is going to be a long-term process. We are not going to fix it, as Fleur you mentioned right now. So we are really aiming to have youth negotiators for all the upcoming negotiations. First, we're focusing on the UN climate change negotiation, and then also for the Rio conventions on biodiversity and desertification. And then later on, hopefully, we have young people in all the negotiations, and really having this intergenerational approach to the negotiations.
Thank you so much for sharing your views on that. And I see that with this, we've actually reached the time exactly on time. So I would like to thank each and every one of you, all three of you, for your participation, and to the audience for being such wonderful listeners. For the audience, if you could share your key learnings from this session in the chat, we would be very keen to understand how this has been for you and whether you found this useful. So once again, thank you, Fleur, Zihan, and Marie-Claire, and we look forward to continuing this conversation offline and on different settings. Lorenzo, back to you.
Wow, that was an amazing discussion. Thank you very much, Ms. Hita Lakhani, and to our speakers for the panel discussion, for your insightful and fruitful insights on the importance of bringing and providing opportunities to amplify youth voices. Let us all give them a warm round of virtual applause. All right, up next, we proceed to our fireside chats focusing on climate action and youth. Let me call on Ms. Lamia Mohsin, Fellow of the Youth Empowerment in Climate Action Platform, or YCAP, to moderate the fruitful discussion. The floor is now yours, Ms. Lamia.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, young change makers from all over the world, a very good afternoon from Dhaka, Bangladesh, and a warm welcome to the fireside chat on climate action and youth participation as part of the Road to Stockholm+50 Regional Dialogue on Youth Empowerment and Climate Action. This is Lamia Mohsin, consultant, the Global Center on Adaptation, and a YCAP fellow on the current cohort, and I will be joining you today as the moderator of the session. So a little bit briefing into the Stockholm+50. On 2nd and 3rd June 2022, a crucial environmental intervention or meeting will be held in Stockholm, anchored with the Decade of Action under this theme of Stockholm+50, a healthy planet for the prosperity of all, our responsibility and opportunity. This high-level meeting will follow months of consultation and discussion with individuals, youth organizations, communities, and governments around the world. And this will be a one-day preparatory meeting to be held at the United Nations headquarters in New York on 28th March 2022. So the Stockholm+50 will commemorate the 1972 United Nations Conference on the Environment and celebrate 50 years of global environmental action. This year, the Road to Stockholm+50 Regional Dialogue on Youth Empowerment in Climate Action is co-organized by UNDP in partnership with UNICEF, UNFCCC, UNEP, UNV, UNESCO, British Council, YOUNGO, and Movers program. And it will serve as one of the key activities in the lead up to the Stockholm+50 conference in June 2022. So the Road to Stockholm Dialogue will focus on direct participation in the NDC revision, implementing and monitoring processes, but it will also highlight environmental multilateralism works, global partnership, and collaboration for the planet. In other words, it will bring together different stakeholders, individuals, communities, including the youth, of course, across Asia and the Pacific to step up our collective efforts to support young environmental human rights activists and their transformative solutions to lead the way, the journey towards 2030. So the objectives of this regional dialogue are to raise awareness, create a call for action, and prepare young climate advocates across Asia and Pacific, provide a platform for young environmental human rights activists, encourage stakeholders to participate in meaningful and diverse ways to address these opportunities, strengthen the collaboration between youth from the Asia-Pacific region, launch key YCAP programs such as Fellowship Cohort 3, highlight local and regional youth-led climate adaptation and mitigation initiatives, and of course, promote green jobs and green businesses available in the Asia-Pacific region. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my speakers for today. First up is Han Chen. Ms. Han Chen is a YCAP fellow based in China who joined the first cohort of the YCAP fellowship back in April 2021. She's currently working as a program associate of industry program at Energy Foundation China, supporting strategy development, fund relations, grants administration. And it must be mentioned that she was also an intern in the natural sciences in unit of the organization's Beijing office from April to September 2019. And she also attended the 2019 United Nations Youth Climate Summit in New York as a representative of the Man and the Biosphere program. Our second speaker, Mr. Michael V. Ilchanma, is a young climate activist based in India, and who also joined the second cohort of the YCAP Fellowship. He's a research scholar in environmental biotechnology, specialized in bioenergy production. And he's an envoy of the Movers program, a member of the Young People Action Team, and Generation Unlimited. Our third speaker is Ashley Young. Ashley currently serves as a representative of the Buddhist Tzu Chi Foundation at the United Nations, and a social science research assistant and project coordinator of the Tzu Chi Community Development Project in the Republic of Sierra Leone. She's currently pursuing her master's in sustainable development management at Sunway University, Malaysia, and she's an activist, an advocate for climate action and environmental protection, and promotes responsible and sustainable lifestyles. So let us begin the discussion with our first speaker, Han. Han, please tell us a little bit about your experience as a climate activist so far. What role do you play in the climate action? Reminder to our panelists that you have 5 minutes each and are requested to give the floor to the next speaker in chronological order. And the third speaker is requested to give the floor back to the MC. So Han, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Lamia. Before I start, I just want to mention that there's some construction work going on upstairs, so please excuse the background noise. So this is Han. Hi, everyone. I'm connecting from Beijing, China, and I'm originally from Fujian province in Southeast China. And I gotta say that I'm very excited to be here today because last year I was one of the participants from the regional dialogue. And this year I got the opportunity to be one of the panelists. So thanks a lot to YCAP for the invitation. And I really appreciate that. So I want to share with you some more information about myself. I'm speaking here as a YCAP fellow, and I'm also working currently at Energy Foundation as a program associate. And previously, just as Lamia introduced, I had experience at UNESCO on water, gender, climate. So with YCAP, I've had some amazing experience in empowering youth climate actions. For example, the first initiative that I took on was to host a conference on climate-related issues. And I remember more than 300 participants from all around the world, not just Asia and Pacific region, registered for the event. And later, I also had the pleasure to be moderating a session for youth consultation for UN's high-level dialogue on energy. The session I was moderating on technology, innovation, and data in the energy sector. So we summarized some key findings and comments in one document as input for a technical working group for the high-level dialogue on energy. And we also identify some major gaps in the energy sector, which I hope to share with you some more details about later. And also, I had the opportunity to attend some other activities at YCAP, such as brown bag session, my climate story, and also this fireside chat here right now with all of you. And on the other hand, at my job at Energy Foundation China, I am deeply involved in the China Cooling Efficiency Project. It is a project that focuses on reducing greenhouse gas emission in China's cooling sector through promoting energy efficiency level of the cooling products, as well as promoting the transition to a more climate-friendly refrigerant. So we are actually working in 5 work streams to achieve this goal. The first will be to reduce the consumption of hydrofluorocarbons, which are a series of strong greenhouse gases that contribute greatly to climate change and global warming. And the second is to improve the energy efficiency standards of cooling equipment. And the third is to improve the market penetration of green and efficient cooling products in both China and abroad. And the fourth will be to increase financial flows to support the transition to a more climate-friendly cooling sector. And the last is to leverage the national policy frameworks and international collaborations on cooling. So these are some of my experience in terms of climate actions. And I also want to point out that I did not study on climate nor on energy in university. So I guess my experience might somehow be helpful for those who would like to work in this sector, but do not necessarily have the related academic background. Anyway, I'm really happy to be here to chat with all of you today. And next, I will give the floor to Michael to introduce himself. Please, Michael.
Thank you so much, Han. And Han is so inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. So my name is Michael, and I am from Mizoram, which is in the northeast part of India. And my climate action stories actually begins when I was in my final year of my university. So for my final year of my university, we were studying about Millennium Development Goals, which is now becoming Sustainable Development Goals, where Sustainable Development Goals number 7 and 13 really interest me. And I wanted to do a project based on that. So for my final year project, we do bioethanol production, which can be used in place of this conventional petrol. And then I really wanted to go into research about the production of sustainable and more eco-friendly and renewable sources of energy. And so I did my research on the production of biodiesel from microalgae for the past 5 to 6 years. And then we have successfully produced biodiesel, which conforms to international standards, which can be used in place of this conventional diesel. And so I was doing a research on the production of this bioenergy sector, but I really wanted to take my work on climate action outside of my lab. So I think that educating the youth, especially in my locality, is very important in bringing about a change in our community. And since most of our community, which is the Mizo community, 60% of our community depends on agriculture, and climate change really affects the production of agriculture. So we are very affected by climate change. So I think it's very important for the youth, who are not only the leaders of the future generation, who are the leaders of this present generation, to take actions. So we started an organization called Soikan, which means to uplift the overall situation of the indigenous youth in my home state, and also to create awareness, and not only to create awareness, to provide a platform for taking actions in regarding all the sustainable development goals. So that is my other works, which is outside my which is outside my lab. And also I am also a secretary of Youth for Sustainability Alliance here in India. And in that alliance, we try to facilitate the working of different organizations who work on sustainability. We try to engage them, we try to give them connections, and try to come up with a strategy or an approach where all the organizations who work on a greener world, who works on sustainability, can work together and come up with a better community. So that can be my introduction. And over to you, Ashley.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Young from Malaysia, and I currently serve as a social science research assistant and project lead at Buddhist City Foundation. So I manage City's humanitarian aid project in the Republic of Sierra Leone, focusing on delivering humanitarian aid services to the vulnerable population to improve the quality of life, education, and water and sanitation issues in the country. And on the other hand, I'm also a youth representative of the organization to the United Nations, advocating for sustainable development with a special focus on climate change, environmental degradation, faith, youth, and gender empowerment through the promotion of sustainable lifestyle and behavioral transformation. And I'm also a mover facilitator of the Movers program and NGO Youth Steering Committee of the United Nations Department of Global Communications. So I have some commonalities with Han and Michael. So I do not have academic background related to sustainability as well for my bachelor degree. And I have only known about the Sustainable Development Goals in my third year of my college. Yeah, but it's cool that how we end up in this sector now, I would say. So regarding the role that youth can play in climate action, I would say there are a lot, but most importantly is how do you see or feel yourself fitting in each of the puzzle. So finding your own niche is very important. Some people are maybe born to be negotiators. Some people have innate event organization skills. So you need to think, what is your niche? I have also been asking myself the same questions for a very long time. So I would not say that I have found it, but I know what do I have passion in, and I know how can I contribute to. So for instance, I found myself plenty of joy in hosting workshops and activities for the youth community to increase the familiarity and also their knowledge towards sustainability and climate change. So when I see people knowing about the SDGs or transforming their usual lifestyle for the planet, it makes me really happy. So I promise myself to contribute my maximum effort to ensure that as many as the young people in my community and the country to have the opportunity to learn about sustainability and climate change. So along with some other young people in the community, I had opportunities to organize many youth-centered and action-oriented activities, including cleanups, sustainable movie nights, awareness campaigns, sustainable lifestyle challenge, workshops, and webinars as a means to promote the knowledge of sustainability and to encourage individual mindset and behavioral transformation. So the outcomes can be as small as one small community of young people finally knowing what is the SDG, or the beach is clean after our cleanup, or someone decided to reduce his or her carbon footprint after watching a documentary with us. But all of this is a progress, is an outcome. So to me, it is like scattering the seeds. They will sprout if you have the patience, sunlight, water, and air. And I believe that every person can be the seed. And I believe all young people can be the one who is growing the seeds. And lastly, I just want to highlight the importance and wonderfulness of the Movers program, which has also allowed me to connect further to the young people outside of Malaysia, including Thailand, India, Indonesia, Philippines, China, New Zealand, even United States and African countries. And I think this is really a good program, and like YCAP is a very good platform to influence more young people to engage in climate related issues and action. Over to you, Lamia.
Thank you so much. Thank you all of our speakers for sharing all the remarkable work that you have been doing and that you continue to do across areas such as energy, sustainable livelihoods, and biotechnology and bioenergy. So I would now like to follow up with a number of questions based on your individual area of expertise. And my first question will be to Han, who is working in the energy sector. So Han, can you share with us key issues related to the energy sector and the climate change, and what do you feel are the major gaps in youth climate action in the energy sector? Over to you, Han.
Thank you, Lamia. So I think for starters, we understand that the energy industry is both a major contributor to climate change, but also it's a sector that climate change will disrupt. So there are three climate change related phenomena that will have a particular impact on the energy sector. The first is global warming, and the second is changing regional weather patterns, including hydrological patterns. And the third is an increase in extreme weather events. So these phenomena will not only affect energy demand, in some regions, they will even affect the whole entire spectrum of energy production and transmission. So for example, with the rising temperatures, growing world population and economic growth, it's not hard to imagine that there will be a significant increase in the overall energy demand. As you know, I work in a cooling sector, and for this sector, we expect to see the energy demand to rise from around 300 terawatt hours in year 2000 to 4,000 terawatt hours in 2050. And it's just for the residential air conditioning in summer. This is the estimation by IPCC. And also the rising temperatures will compromise the energy efficiency for thermal conversion of the power plants, which are currently providing about 80% of global electricity. And then the changing weather patterns and extreme weather events present challenges to hydropower and also other weather-driven energy renewables, like the anticipated increase in cloudiness in some regions would affect solar technologies, while an increase in the number and severity of storms could damage equipment. They are also likely to adversely impact agricultural yields with a knock-on effect on the production and availability of biomass for energy generation. And as the biggest source of greenhouse gases, the energy sector also holds a huge potential in terms of mitigation and adaptation. So some of the options include reducing the overall energy demand, improving energy efficiency in transmission and distribution, switching to lower carbon fuels, for example, from coal to gas, and also increasing the use of renewables, and also promoting the introduction of carbon capture and storage technologies. So for that's my reflections in terms of the key issues related to the energy sector and climate change. And for some of the gaps for youth climate action in this sector, I want to share with you some of the gaps we identified from the consultation for the UN's high-level dialogue on energy. So actually from this consultation, we realized even though a lot of policies, action plans, and projects are being undertaken in this field, we found that there's little youth engagement in them. And also in the clean energy economy workforce, it's dominated by mostly male employees or senior employees. And there is also lack of financial support and capacity building for young people to develop or maintain themselves in this sector. So we also have a few recommendations from our consultation. The first is that we think there should be definitely more access and resources for youth to develop their careers in clean energy industries. So for example, business incubation platforms can be established to offer young entrepreneurs and working on integrated solutions and scale up their businesses. And the second is that training on sustainable energy, climate justice, digital skills, and soft skills like communication should be mainstreamed and provided for youth, because only in this way can we untap youth's potential in joining the workforce for the clean energy industry, and also cooperate with local and diverse communities in the transition. And the last and also the most challenging one, I think, is to assess and strengthen national and regional youth engagements can be set up to collect youth feedback for the whole life cycle of policy, programs, and activities, and youth organizations and youth-led initiatives. These are my reflections for these two questions. And I want to give the floor back to Lamia.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I think I completely agree with you where you said that, you know, we need to sort of assess and strengthen national and regional youth engagements, for example, like YCAP. So my next question will be to Michael. Michael, given that you're working with biodiversity, bioenergy, so can you share with us key issues around biodiversity and particularly those that you feel are relevant given current context? And can you sort of elaborate on the research that you're doing and how it is contributing to biodiversity preservation and conservation? Over to you, Michael.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So to everyone here who don't know about biodiversity, because I believe that we come from a different background. So biodiversity in itself is a very broad term, and itself is a very broad term. So biodiversity is the differentiation or the diversity among all forms of living. So when you consider the smallest bacteria to human beings, so the diversity among these organisms, even the plants, the animals, the fishes, the amphibians. So the difference between all these organisms is biodiversity. And the biodiversity, I am working on biodiversity, and just a quick background on why I was working on it. In India, we have two hotspots of biodiversity. It is the Western Ghats and the Northeast part of India. And I belong to the Northeast part of India. And what we mean by biodiversity hotspot is that it is very rich in biodiversity. So there are so many types of plants, there are so many types of animals, there are so many types of microorganisms, but also it is very, it is facing a threat to endangerment. So although there are so much biodiversity in that area, there is a threat to those biodiversity. So I am residing in one of the states where it is considered as one of the biodiversity hotspots of India. And I have spoken to Mia here, who is one of the co-hosts here last week. During my childhood, I used to see a flock of birds flying around the sky when it's time for migration. But right now, I have never seen those type of birds migrating. And also, in my state, we belong to one of the indigenous tribe in India. We practice sustainability as a part of our culture. So we don't need we don't need people to teach us rainwater harvesting, and we have practiced so many sustainability which is introduced here. And we do, so all these the 3 R's, reduce, recycle, and reuse, are like for our Western term, which is newly introduced, but in our culture, we already like practice it from my great-grandfather to my grandfather and to my father and to me. But one of the things which we practice, and it is a threat to biodiversity, is our type of agriculture. And as I have mentioned before, 60% of the people here in my state depends on agriculture. Although our lifestyle is very sustainable, the agriculture, the type of agriculture which we practice, provides a threat to biodiversity. And that type of agriculture is called slash and burn. It is also called Jhum cultivation, where they clear the forest area, they cut down trees, and they use that for their for cultivation of rice or whatever crops they want. And when they clear the forest area, even though they can use that plot of land only for that particular harvest season, in the next cultivation season, they have to clear another forest area. So that type of agriculture is still practiced here in India, in my parts of the state. I don't know about other parts of the world. And although our organization and some other youth-led organization are trying our best to come up with an alternative form of agriculture, we cannot do it because these farmers who are practicing this slash and burn type of agriculture, they also know that it clears the forest area and it reduces the number of trees, but they don't have any other source of occupation, and they don't have the facilities to practice other forms of agriculture. For example, if we ask them to practice terrace farming costs a lot and lots of money to build that terrace. It needs money, it needs manual labor. And a farmer who have like 5 family members to feed and they depend only on agriculture, it is almost impossible for him, without getting any funds from the government, without getting funds from any other agency, to practice that type of sustainable farming. So there is a very huge issue which is a threat to biodiversity here in my state. And sometimes I don't know what to do, but I do not want to lose hope. And so we are still struggling to come up with a solution which is practicable to the farmers so that they can stop this practice of Zoom cultivation and practice more sustainable form of agriculture, because our biodiversity depends on us and we are responsible for conserving our own biodiversity, because it will come back to us. Because when we lost biodiversity, we brought climate change, and when there is a climate change, it affects the harvest of agriculture again. So it all depends on us, and now we need to find an alternative to this type of agriculture. And coming to Lamia's second point, how is my research somewhat related to conservation of biodiversity? As Han have mentioned, one of the key factors responsible for bringing about climate change, global warming, is the production of greenhouse gases. So in India, one of the major sectors which produce greenhouse gases are the transport sector. And the transport sector here in India mostly use petrol and diesel. And here my research comes into the production of biodiesel. So currently the diesel which we get are majorly sourced from fossil fuels. So fossil fuels are the fuels which have been derived from the decayed compost and it will take millions of years to come up with this fossil fuels. Now, research has shown that the global consumption of these fossil fuels already peaked 50%. So we already used up 50% of our fuel reserve. So there is a need to come up with an alternative source of energy. One, because there is an energy crisis, and the second, because there is an environmental crisis. Because of the burning of this conventional petrol and diesel, it leads to accumulation of greenhouse gases, which cause climate change, and climate change is a threat to biodiversity. So me and my teammates were doing a research for almost 6 years to come up with biodiesel from microalgae. And through our research, not only coming up with biodiesel, which can replace or reduce the use of diesel, we also find that these microalgae are very efficient in the treatment of wastewater. So when we grow this algae in wastewater, we collected wastewater from the sewage, we collected wastewater from the industries. So this wastewater contains a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus and heavy metals. And these microalgae actually use that nitrogen and phosphate and heavy metals for their nutrition. So we grow this microalgae in wastewater. And when the microalgae are grown enough, we harvest them and we extract the oil from them. And while they grow in that wastewater, they treat that wastewater. So when lots of nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and heavy metals are in that wastewater, it is not possible for the aquatic life, like the fishes, like the amphibians, to grow in that water. So this microalgae will take up that nutrients, which is harmful for the aquatic life, and it will use it for its own growth. And when it's growth, we extract oil from the microalgae, and we produce biodiesel from it. So we actually kill two birds with one stone. One, we produce biodiesel, and one, we treat wastewater, all for the conservation of biodiversity and to prevent climate change. And I wanted to also ask this question to Ashley. Ashley, I know that you have led a sustainable lifestyle, and I also wanted to lead a more sustainable lifestyle. And what is actually mean by when we say a sustainable lifestyle? And what are the things which you incorporated in your daily life to make it more sustainable? And also the second questions, you must be facing a lot and lots of challenges when you try to shift your lifestyle to a more sustainable lifestyle. So can you tell us also the challenges which you face while living a very sustainable lifestyle?
Thank you, Michael. Yes, so I believe many of us have heard about sustainable lifestyle, eco-friendly lifestyle, or plastic-free lifestyle. So there is the same concept of every of this term, which is we put the importance of the Mother Earth in front of the convenience and luxury of our living. So it is also a similar concept to a strong sustainability. So weak sustainability is supported by the idea that as long as the natural capital is manufactured into something with the equivalent capital value, it can be used without constraint. So efforts have been made to simply find technological replacements for the resources and services that nature provides. However, strong sustainability, on the other hand, is an approach to sustainability that contends that existing natural capital cannot be duplicated or replaced. As such, it should be protected, maintained, and enhanced in order to continue receiving the benefits of the natural capital. Therefore, it also means to valuing nature intrinsically through knowing that human society and its political economy are integral and interdependent components of nature and the biosphere. Therefore, sustainable lifestyle and how we think, we have our mindset to think sustainably is learning to coexist with the earth. And this is a very important concept to adopt a sustainable lifestyle. So when I was 15 years old, I was engaged in the downstream of the environmental issues, particularly performing recycling. And when time goes by and I have learned more, I realized that purity at the source is the most important amongst all. So without us creating trash from the beginning, without us emitting carbon dioxide from the beginning, we would not have to separate trash for recycling. We would not have to find a way to resolve all the carbon emission that we're having now. So when the water is overflowing, our immediate action is that we need to turn off the water tap rather than getting a cloth to wipe the floor, right? So therefore I promised myself, if I am advocating for climate action, I should also change my personal lifestyle. I know animal agriculture is one big cause of carbon emission, so I quit eating meat. I know single-use plastics end up in landfill emitting methane, so I go plastic-free, including using sustainable material-made items, reusable utensils, and even reusable sanitary pads. So with this, I gain more confidence in promoting climate action, no matter if it is sharing my effort, negotiating with policymakers, or providing climate change workshop. And I think this is because I am doing what I advocate, and I also advocate of what I'm doing. So I also think information and resources sharing are very important to ensure successful adoption of the sustainable lifestyle, because many young people in the community around the world are actually lacking of the resources of how they can adopt a sustainable lifestyle, how they can reduce their carbon footprint individually. So I think I have also committed myself to share as much as information I can to ensure that the knowledge on sustainability and climate action are reached to this marginalized youth population. And I think practicing a sustainable lifestyle is also not contradicting with our ask to the government to act for climate change. Rather, it is actually one great supporting evidence that young people is contributing all we can for the environment and the climate. So I really wish all of us here today can come together to really adopt a sustainable lifestyle. It can be from our food choices, our clothing choices, our living options, and also our commuting methods. So with this, we can actually build a stronger youth advocacy for sustainability and climate action to show the world that our generation is willing and really putting the benefit of the planet at the forefront. On the second question on the day-to-day challenge when it comes to have a sustainable lifestyle, I would say habitual convenience and comfortability is one of the greatest challenge because we have been so used to carbon heavy and the life full with plastic. So you can try to reach out to any items near you now, which one is produced or utilized without carbon emission, or which of them is plastic free. I would say it is very difficult. So I have been trying very hard to get rid of the habitual convenience and comfortability. And we have been also so used to the linear economy that take, make, dispose has become our daily habit. So to overcome this, I think we need to be very diligent and mindful every day on our action and always reminding ourselves that we must change our habit towards sustainability. So, you know, like going plastic free or carbon free means that you need to carry many things out. Boba cup, straws, utensil, water bottle, but people might love to bring nothing when going out. But once you decided to put planet in front of all of your comfortability and convenience, I believe this will not be a major issue. And also following this, I think greenwashing is also another issue that I have seen. So I've seen quite some number of people or influencers, they tend to promote eco-friendly lifestyle and use some sustainable items, but it is not determined or maintained. It mainly only for Instagram promotion or business purposes, or they like to buy other items and then they just leave it at home and not using it due to inconvenience. So somehow greenwashing accidentally infiltrate our lives and shift our focus on acting for the planet toward being an Instagram star. So how can we overcome our habitual practices and transforming them towards sustainability and maintaining it is a huge lesson that we all need to learn. So rethinking our whole relationship with the planet is the key. And lastly, I just want to add that I think lack of sufficient infrastructure is also one major hindrance for us to adopt a sustainable lifestyle because, for example, in Malaysia, public transportation system is poorly designed and managed. So it has forced us to use private transportation, unfortunately. So, you know, like the bus stations usually are very hard to reach. It is either you need to cross a huge bridge or a highway. So this has caused people not to adopt a public commuting lifestyle. And the public transportation are also like always late and not following the time on schedule. So, and also like in addition to that, with the development of green vehicles, many developing countries, including Malaysia, are still far behind of the trend and do not have the facility. And this is also raised to another issue, which is the high cost. So without the effort of the government and other stakeholders, individuals will also actually face various challenges in adopting an in-depth sustainable lifestyle. So not only transportation, for example, if you need water refilling machine, I believe many developing nations are also still do not have also do not have that facility in the public spaces. Yeah, so I think once we learned how to transform the whole systemic change using the concept of coexist with Earth, I believe we can make a breakthrough in adopting a sustainable lifestyle. Back to you, Lamia.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for highlighting some of the practices to live a sustainable life. I think all of us here have a lot to learn in terms of how to live, not for ourselves, but for to ensure that we keep the planet healthy. So now that we have an insight into all the amazing work that you all are doing and you continue to do, and we've learned about some of your perspectives about the issues. So we would all like to know from all of you that for the youth who want to follow your footsteps, where to start and what will be your call to action for hundreds of young people out there who want to have an impact and who want to strive to build a sustainable future. So for this, I'd like to take the help of our audience. Can you please write in the chat section, who do you think should go first? Mention a name in the chat. Okay, so Caitlin said Ashley, then we have someone said Han, Ashley again. Let's see, we have another Ashley. So I think it's a tie between Ashley and Han. So I think maybe we give Ashley our third speaker, the first rank here. So Ashley, what would be your call to action?
Okay, thank you. So I would say like engaging in various platforms that could allow you to learn and explore more ideas on sustainability and climate change is the most important one. So for example, I think I'm not trying to promote anything here, but I really think that Movers program is a really, really great platform for the young people to learn about climate change. So after you have engaged in that platform, it allows you not only to learn, but it allows you to teach others to learn. So I think young people nowadays need to engage yourself in more events like this so you are able to influence the other young people in your community as well. And additional to that, I think engaging in your own community by doing volunteering or trying to initiate and lead some youth-centered events is important as well, because you might be the one who is capable of leading all the other young people in the community. So just do not think that your action is too small, and you need to remember that you can change the world with all of your actions. So just start doing anything that you think it is correct today, and I think that will be helpful.
Thank you so much, Ashley. There were some very powerful words. So over to Han.
Yes, thank you, Lamia, and thank you, Ashley, for the inspiring speech. And I really have so many points that I want to echo with you, because what I really want to say for all the young fellows who would like to start taking climate actions is that I want to suggest you to really find where your passions are and what you're genuinely related to and what you're good at. Because I think you don't have to be a scientist to contribute to climate actions. You could be a photographer, a dancer, a journalist, a writer, or in my case, I am a program associate and a YOUNGO fellow, or anything else you would like to be, while still having your own way of promoting climate actions. Then I also encourage all of you to connect with the networks available to you and seek your own roles in them. It could be YCAP, Movers Program, YOUNGO, or other local or international initiatives, because on these platforms, there are plenty of opportunities and resources for youth who would like to engage in climate-related activities. And finally, I wish to encourage you to exchange ideas and information, make friends on these platforms, take opportunities to build your capacities and unite as a community. Just as Linka, one of the co-hosts, said to us yesterday, all we need to do is really to be ourselves. And remember that when we speak up and when we take actions, think of millions of other young people in Asia Pacific and more of them around the world. Think of them standing right beside you, and you're speaking and acting for them. And that will give you, and surely has given me, enormous confidence and also courage. So that will be some of my call to action for you here today. Thank you, Lamia.
Thank you, Han, for the very energetic and of course inspiring words. And coming to our last speaker in this case, Michael, what will be your call to action for all the young people out there?
Yes, so all my fellow young people here, I want to stress the importance of 1%. So just last week, I read this book called Atomic Habits, and it mentions the importance of 1%. So we cannot attain 100% without 1%. So putting 1% each every day will make up to 100%. So all the small habits count. Even if you want to lead a sustainable lifestyle, even if you want to go to a research, even if you want to do a studies, or even if you want to make a change in your society or a society upliftment, start with a small step. Because a small step, if you take a small step each day, it will lead to a bigger step. So I want to stress the importance of 1% to everyone present here today. And also, I am going to be very honest here. Once you go into climate action, once you go into climate mitigation, sometimes you are going to get frustrated. Sometimes you are going to get angry. Sometimes you are going to lose hope. But I wanted to make sure that there are so many other youths who are beside you. You are not alone. So we are all working here to create a better future for us. So you are not alone. So even if you feel frustrated, please take a step back, take time for yourself and come back. And also, the second last point is say yes to opportunity. So all the things that happened to me, all the personal development and professional development that happened to me is because I say yes. I say yes to Movers Program. I say yes to YCAP. So I wanted to give thanks to Movers Program and YCAP for all the things they have done to my professional life and to my personal life and also to my society. And also even in relations to the things which I have said, say yes to opportunities, but also take time to take care of yourself. As in Linka have mentioned, I want to quote Linka, if you don't take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. So you have to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. So those are the four things which I wanted to say to my fellow youth who are present here today.
Thank you. What powerful words and what energy and what enthusiasm. That was an amazing call for action from all three of you. And I believe all of our audiences here will agree with, of course, what Michael said. If you do not take care of yourself, you will not be able to take care of others. So big clap for all of our panelists here. So that was an amazing discussion that we have. Now we actually have a feedback question for our audience. I have put it in the chat section. So to our audience, could you tell us what is your key learning or key takeaway from this session? So if you can write it down quickly, jot down the words that instantly come to your mind and share with us in the chat. Small community mobilization is important, Terry is saying, especially using zero carbon design. We have Wenxuan saying that all little steps count. Priya is saying that we need to start small and together we can make it large. Pallavi is saying voice of youth matters. Wadana is saying Ashley, Han, and Michael are so inspiring. So we have some great feedback from our audience as well. And with that, I would like to hand over to Lorenzo.
Wow, that was a very, very amazing and inspirational session. And thank you very much, Lamia, for moderating this fireside chat. And of course, to our youth speakers and fellows from the YCAP and the Movers Program, Michael, to Ashley, and to Han, for all of the inspirational things that you have said and imparted to our youth audience here today. So to sum up some of the learning points from their session, Han shared 3 particular impacts and proposed that the energy sector also would hold a huge, huge potential in turning mitigation and adaptation to our favor. Michael, on the other hand, shared his views about the important connection between sustainable lifestyle and biodiversity, especially in the realm of conservation. And lastly, Ashley has highlighted the importance of involving sustainability into our lifestyle, into our everyday life. And altogether, our 3 speakers for today in this fireside chat have imparted as well their call to action that all of us, each and every one of us here, can actually use in our lives, in our own climate journeys. Once again, thank you very much to Lamia, Michael, Ashley, and Han. Let us all give them a warm round of virtual applause. All right. Up next, we would like to proceed to our next keynote session, focusing on How do young teachers empower their students to support climate action? And for this session, let us call in Ms. Maria Palosis, primary school teacher at Footprints International School, Phnom Penh, Movers Ambassador, and Ambassador of the STSN Global Schools Program. The floor is now yours, Maria.
Thank you, Lorenzo. And it's really nice to see you today. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Okay, so thank you very much for this opportunity. And let us start with a very brief introduction of myself. Okay, so you've seen some of the important, not so important, but the basic ones here. So I'm a teacher. I've been a professional teacher since 2010, and I'm a Movers Ambassador, Global Schools Program Advocate, and advocating for sustainable development goals and raising awareness on SDGs in different communities within the classroom community or school community, as well as in other communities around us, and mostly focusing on the youth. I've also been a scuba diver, AKA ocean cleaner, since 2014. So I've been helping clean out the ocean in removing some trash. And I added it here because, as you can see on the photo that I placed, it's one of the happiest moments, I think, that I could remember in my life, like doing something for our environment, especially when you see the situation of the ocean under the sea and the impact of what man can do in terms of their fair share of trash and garbage. And why did I put my ping pong player years here? It's because I was able to graduate as a teacher because of me playing ping pong, because I've been a varsity for a long time. So let's move on to the next one. So before we continue with the main topic, I want to give you a 1-minute challenge. Okay, are you ready for the challenge? Right? Okay, so this will be our topic for today. How do young teachers empower their students and raise awareness about climate action? All right, here's our 1-minute challenge. Okay, ready? Let's start. So the challenge is, that's not the challenge. It's not a freezing challenge. Here's the challenge. All right, can you hold your breath for 1 minute? Let's start. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Can you send us a thumbs up if you're able to do it for 1 minute? If you're able to do so, well done. Congratulations. Okay, so catch your breath, okay? Go back to your normal breathing. Now, why did they let you do that? But why, teacher? It's usually the question kids would ask their teacher. But why, teacher? So why did they let you do that? So as you know, oxygen is one of the main gases it's actually the only gas that humans breathe in and allows us to survive. And it's not only humans who breathe in oxygen, but also animals and even plants. So imagine yourself trying to breathe in for holding your breath for 1 minute. And imagine doing this for the rest of your lives, because trees and plants and trees and other green and plant creatures are no longer surviving. What are we going to do? So this only actually shows you the importance of oxygen and this kind of gas to our survival. Okay. So here it's a representation of how much as the share of the oxygen producers all around us. So 50% is from marine microbes. You can find them under the sea, 25% from land plants, the trees and the plants that you see all around you, and 25% are kelps. These are also from the sea. So imagine them dying and all of them are gone in our planet, then that's a tremendous effect on us. And right now, why is that important? Because climate change is threatening their survival, and climate change is causing them to deteriorate in terms of population. And since they're part of the food chain, it's a domino effect. So from plants, it goes to animals and then humans as the top consumers. So how is education connected to climate change? Education is connected to climate change in a lot of aspects. First of all, climate change is a phenomenon that is going on around the world, but it's not something that a lot of people are aware, especially students. They know what climate is, they know what changes, but how does it affect them? And how can we integrate it to education so that they would understand it further? So here you can see that early foundation, or the things that kids learn at a very young age, they're able to carry it all throughout until their adulthood. And if it's something that is instilled in them at a very young age, they're able to create a foundation in their mind, in their habits, in their skills. And this is very important in future decision making. If a child is already aware of what's going on around them, they're able to make more sound decisions. They're able to make better outcomes for themselves in the future. As you can see here, education solutions lead to climate actions. So the more you know, the more you can do, and the more you can change. Here, there is a study that says if only 132 million out-of-school girls across developing world or countries, and as well as everyone who's studying or in education, would know about climate change, it could result to 85 gigaton of reduction in carbon dioxide by 2050. So the more people know, the more chances that they're able to connect mentally and also through their actions, and the more that they can create impact and initiatives on helping to change the situation of global climate change. I would like to share with you one of the works that some of our students has done in our school. So this is a poster making campaign about the 3 R's, and this is a work done by 7 to 8 years old children. And at that age, you can see how they visualize the world as it is and what kind of action would they like to do. So the challenge is, if a 7 to 8 year old child could do this, what more could adults like us do for our climate, for our world, for our earth? Okay. So another question is, why should students care about climate change? Students refer not only to children, but also students in general. As for the children, 18 years old and below, it's one of their rights to live in a safe and secured world. Imagine yourself living in a not safe and secured home. It threatens your existence. It's the same thing with them. They need to be able to survive. And if the world around them is not livable, then how will they survive? And even the next generations would survive. It also helps increase their capacity to adopt the harsh impacts of climate change, which means they could survive on their own without the help of other people. We are leading them to a path of self-sustainability. And I think one of the things that people think about nowadays is global sustainability together. But I think it's very important that we need to start self-sustainability at a very young age. We need to teach kids how to live independently and responsibly towards their community and their environment. It also prepares them for real world problems. For example, I would like to share you the next one activity that our students did. Here is a design thinking activity that some of my students did. So they have to deliver medical kits to a certain location after an earthquake. So here they can come up, they can create solutions such as bridges. They could build bridges, they could build ramps, they could use robotics in order to bring the medical kit to those who are actually in need. It's a simulation, but it helps us understand how do they think, what are they willing to do, and how much are they willing to work and help out people. Are they going to stop when challenges happen, or are they going to carry through? So this is like a simple activity that teachers could actually integrate, and it's a simple way for students to understand how they could relate to situations brought about by climate change. So why and how teachers gain power so they can empower their students? It's very basic and it's very simple. We cannot transfer something that we don't know. So as teachers, we transfer skills, we transfer knowledge, and we need to empower ourselves before we could actually empower others. And how can we do that? We need more opportunities for training and professional development, more access to available resources, and peer learning networks and mentoring. So we have to approach this in all aspects. what can we get? What can we do internally and what can we do externally? How can we work this together? We have to gather the resources that we have, and we have to find resources that are available outside our reach. And how can we put those together? So we need to be climate activists or advocates ourselves before we actually do that and share that to our kids or our students. And let me add that there are a lot of resources online that teachers could actually use in their classrooms or to help the kids or to teach kids or share to the kids what climate change actually is. Now resources are available online, and there are very diverse, and they are very differentiated. So it's suitable for different kinds of learners or different kinds of students. So how can young teachers empower their students to support climate action? You can see here that there are seven things that you could do, but on a nutshell, I would like to give you 6 different processes. First, introduction. Introduce what climate change is. What is the impact? So that answers the question, what? Connection. It tells you how to do it and what are they going to do about it? How can they relate it to their personal lives? Integration. How can they integrate it in their family, within their community, in their everyday habit, in their everyday task? Next, reaction. How do they feel towards this knowledge that they have learned about climate change, the new skills, the new awareness that they received? What are they going to do about it? How can they apply it in the real world situation? So now that they know how to apply it, what do they have to do? Are they going to stop once they have done it once, or they have to keep on repeating it? So most likely they have to keep on repeating it and apply it in different situations so that the effect would be long-term, and so that they would be able to carry on not just until 2030, but on a very sustainable amount of time. Okay. So I want to share with you some also of the projects that the students did. So these are just simple campaigns that the students are able to do once they have already found out what the 3 R's are, what is climate change. And these are all made from recyclable materials. So one of the students on the left, he understood the impact of pesticides or fertilizers when they are absorbed by plants from the ground. They also learned how to create self-watering pots. And they're also able to create different projects using recyclable materials. So they now understood that you don't have to throw everything. You can even create something out of these things. So what are the challenges in integrating climate change awareness in the classroom? There are a lot of challenges. And one of the things is that climate change is a global concern. However, when we try to adopt it within the school community or in the local community, there are so many things to consider. One of them is the limitations of the teacher's role. Another one would be knowledge or misconceptions. And the most important thing that they have to do is to consider the cultural background of the locals or where they are located. They have to be sensitive about different policies and different laws. And all of those things have to go together in order to achieve one goal. And another thing is that the curriculum, not all schools or educational institutions use the same curriculum. And climate change, the curriculums are something that has already been there for years. And if they integrate climate change, the topic of climate change, there will be some changes along the way. And it's not that easy to integrate, but it's not impossible. It's workable. All right, so how can teachers work on integrating climate action or climate change, and how can they take action within themselves? There are 5 steps here that I was able to apply in our school and within our school community. Number 1, communication. Share your goal. Do you agree with that common goal? Number 2, discuss. Talk about the 5H. Very basic. It's something that you can even share to your kids. What, who, when, where, who, what is the topic? Who are the concerned people? When do you need to do it? Where do you need to do it? Why do you need to do it? And how are you going to do it? Work together, take the problem within yourself, and then bring it to your classroom. It's kind of like a macro to micro approach, or you can do it the other way around. Micro amongst you, teachers, macro among your students. Collaboration. It's very important that you set aside your judgments. Work together, think together towards the same goal. Take action. You have to act together. And last but not the least, interaction. You have to go out, not just within your community, not just within the school community, but also outside. How can you grow your action? How can you expand it? All right. So before I end today's session, before I end your session with me today, I have one more question for you. Would you rather take $1 million now or 1 penny doubling every day for 30 days? 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. So the actual answer to that, you can make your choice, but here I would like to share the answer. If you take the other option, which is to take a penny and double it every day, you're going to have 5,368,709 pennies in 30 days. Why did I ask you that? Our children, the students nowadays, is our greatest, one of our greatest commodities. Why don't you empower your manpower so that they would be able to sustain themselves and reduce the impact and reduce the load from other people? So remember, in children, there are billions of them. So empower them. So in the future, you will have more manpower that can actually sustain themselves and maybe make better decisions than we are doing nowadays. So I hope that empowered you guys, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Maria Pelosis, for that amazing talk on how we can empower our students to support climate action. And also, it's good to see you again, Ms. Maria. From your talk, we have learned that through quality education, children are increasingly already being aware of what is going on around them, really. And they are now able to make more or less sound decisions and make better outcomes for their future. As for the solutions leading to climate action, the more you know, the more you can do, and the more you can change. This encapsulates a concept of empowerment through knowledge and education. That is why we have to really link quality education and climate action, because children have to be empowered for the future of our planet. Once again, thank you very much, Ms. Maria Pelosis. Let us give her a warm round of applause. All right. Up next, we now proceed to our final keynote session for today, focusing on climate behaviors, love, sorrow, and the emotions that power climate action. Let us call in Ms. Mia Redfrog, Fellow of YCAP. Over to you, Mia.
Hello, everybody. How are you all doing? Let me share my screen very quickly, and then we can begin. I am Mia Redfrog, and today I'm here to talk about climate behaviors, love, sorrow, and other emotions that power climate action. I will be discussing this in 3 parts, basically. 1, what's my story? 2, 7 questions that I asked to 8 different people to get more perspective, and what did I learn from it? Yes. My story. I am Mia Madhu Abraham. I'm a 19-year-old student social worker from Kerala, India. And today being here, I also represent a few platforms, including Movers Program as Mo Ambassador, YCAP Family as a YCAP Fellow from Cohort 2, Learning Planet Family as a youth fellow, and Youth for TPNW, that's Youth for Treaty Against Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So as a delegate there, YOUNGO's Ocean Force Communication Team, Your Generation Unlimited, YPAT team, and very recently Girl Up Nation. I have the disproportionate advantage of being raised by sustainability warriors. My parents preached and at a very young age made sure that we understood what is the importance of nature. And they've also been involved in various fair trade, climate conscious, sustainability driven, local supporting initiatives and ventures for a really, really long time. And they established a family brand called Red Frog. And that's why I chose to be known as Mia Red Frog rather than the name I was given. My climate activism in particular started when I saw a young Swedish girl protesting before the Swedish parliament. Her name's Greta, by the way, and I know all of you know her. I didn't know the story, but it was very inspiring to see one person stand up and the entire world shocked. and I wanted to be like her. And at the same time, I was going through tough existential crisis and existential questions. What's my purpose? Am I supposed to be here? Do I deserve a chance at life? Etc., etc., etc. So it was pretty scary. And very lucky for me, and I consider it a blessing as well, I found MOVA's program at about the same time. So I got to see bigger things, climate action, gender equality, sustainability, better friendships, mental health, biodiversity, quality education, so much more. So my focus shifted from just me to how can I give to other people? How can I be kinder to others, nature, to myself? And step by step, I started growing, I started engaging in more and more things, and that's my story. So I thought it would be really, really cool to check in with others and see what their story is. So I had 7 questions in mind, and I chose 8 different people. When I say 8 different people, I mean people from different age groups, different countries, who identified with different spectrums of the LGBTQ+ rainbow, different educational backgrounds, different employment status, different cultures, entirely different 8 people who are just like you. And my first question was, how are you? How old are you? And so I received responses like, I am fabulous. To stop it, can we skip to the good part? So those were the responses I received. And about age, there were people who were 16 all the way to 30. So here are the names that I interviewed: Sheen, Sange, Prajesh, Saiba, Haseeb, Nawal, Probin, and Dr. Michael. And the next question was, how many climate-related changes have you seen? Can you state an example? So these are the responses that I received. But rising temperature stands out because that was the one that everybody struck. But my personal favorite is the number of young people who talk about climate change. And then again, as Mike was here before, Dr. Michael, he's one of the people I interviewed. Mike told me this after sharing 7 different experiences. I think these are the only changes that I can share today, but give me a day more and I can come up with a bigger list. Relatable for many people. So question number 3 was, what are your emotions when it comes to climate-related talks? And so I was bombarded with so many, but these stood out. I'm scared, I feel nothing, I'm sorry for what happened, it's sad, it's motivating, it's hopeful. And Sange had to tell me that the best thing is people are talking about climate change and climate action, but it's really, really sad to see what is happening and what could happen. And for Probin, it was, I'm okay right now. We are all okay right now. But what about the generations yet to come? Will they be okay? Relatable again. And the next question was, why do you think young people matter in climate-related discussions? Saiba, who is an amazing person, just told me, you cannot deny the importance of young people in climate action. And if we don't do anything now, the next generation will never have a chance to see what could happen. And for Nawal, it is old people have already seen life, so they don't feel the need to take action. But for young people, if we don't take action, there will not be a tomorrow. 5th question was, do you think young people have a voice in Asia Pacific? I received a bold, strong yes from all 8 people. And according to Prajesh, young people have a voice. But the question is, are they being heard? And if we don't have a seat at the table, the next thing we could do is pull up with a chair. And for 16-year-old Sheen, young people have a voice, but it is being stopped at all levels. So if you're a young person using your voice right now, being here, and you aren't being stopped, then with great power comes great responsibility. My 6th question was, what can a young person do? It was the same responses and a summed up version of what you heard today. Start with small things. Don't be afraid to ask for help or question those in power. And my personal favorite, I do what I can. It might not be everything, but it is everything to me. And this is a story of Haseeb, who goes to people every day and asks, is this really important? Do I need a paper ticket? Do I need a plastic bag? 9 out of 10 times the response he receives is, well, we can't do anything about it. But 10 out of 10 times he goes back and asks the same question. So his idea behind this is anytime they gossip or present a report, have a small chit chat, they remember the stubborn young man who always comes back to them and asks the same question. And this is my final question, and I know this is relatable for so many of you. What motivates you to take action? The impact of what I do. And second, the impact of our actions on people, planet, and peace. These were the 7 questions I asked 8 different people. And here comes the conclusion. What did I learn? 1, Young people are greatly underestimated. We're often put into this narrative of you're too young, you're too naive, you're too energetic, you're too spirited, you are too active. And this comes from the people we love, respect, and we work hard for. So what we don't understand is we have a lot of energy, yes, but we are also human beings. Sometimes hearing and seeing these, we fall into traps of thinking, I'm not good enough. What change am I going to make? Or maybe I should quit this all and just focus on my own life. Everybody, we think a lot and we actually think about a lot. Second was climate action doesn't happen in silos. Every time we speak about something, be it mental health, feminism, sustainability, inclusivity, indigenous knowledge, courage, kindness, vulnerability, etc., 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 we're in fact talking about climate change. Every single step you take for something bigger than yourself, be it kindness you show to a little puppy, you're in fact talking about climate change. And the last one, there needs to be a model of Asia-Pacific specific climate action. What do I mean by that? Farmers know that they're cutting down trees for agriculture and is dangerous for Earth, but this is not there is no alternative, or if one exists, then it's very expensive. Dr. Mike had reflected on this before in the fireside chat. We were talking about slash and burn agriculture. And this is very real for many Asia-Pacific persons because we might buy 3 t-shirts in a year, and then when we buy the third one, we might think, I am actually harming nature. Do I have an alternative? Or when you see people cutting down branches here in Kerala, which is very, very common, you might think the same. So what do we do about it? We adapt. In this case, people could write to the local legislations for funding or subsidies, which is terrace farming, or plant more trees or other ways for reducing your carbon footprint. And this is specific to you. You can make any decision that suits you and the way that you live. But I'd like to end with this quote from Dr. Jane Goodall. It is desperately important that the voices of all those seeking to protect our future are heard, male and female, old and young. The latest IPCC report is out. We need to take quick action. Young people are ready to take action. On top of it all, we're not always motivated. We might be too naive, we might believe people easily, but we have a voice and we're willing to use it. And if nobody's going to give us a space, we're going to pull up a chair and be there. This is what I found from everybody. It was an absolutely amazing journey. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to me. Back to you, Lorenzo.
Thank you very much, Miss Mia Red Frog, for that very, very creative session to end our day 1 of the dialogue on a very, very fruitful note. And we learned from your talk that more or less we can deconstruct, our relations with each other. What do we mean by this? We can take real life experiences, opinions, aspirations, and emotions, both the good and the bad, from active climate advocates that are actually going through, and use these to help us view and relate with them on a more personal level as fellow human young beings, and it closes the gap and allows for more empowerment. So once again, thank you very much, Mia, for this very, very creative session. And I hope that all of us here have learned from your perspectives, from your learnings, and from the perspectives and learnings of our fellows in UCAP. All right. And today, we really had a lot of new learnings, stories, and interesting insights to definitely add and expand our perspectives on climate. And today, we have listened to various speakers from different backgrounds, organizations, and sectors. We were also welcomed by convening partners in the opening session a while ago. And then we heard inspirational messages from young climate leaders and advocates. We also had a wonderful, wonderful time with our speakers who shared on our journey beyond COP26 and on bringing youth voices to where it matters the most. We then transitioned to our fireside chats on different pressing climate themes. And finally, we ended with keynote sessions delivered by active youth working for climate action. We hope that we can all apply what we have learned today to our own climate leadership journeys to realize our aspirations for our planet. We thank you for listening very attentively and participating actively in today's sessions. And for tomorrow, we will be having another set of amazing and exciting sessions in store for all of you. That is why you have to really join us again tomorrow for our final day. And once again, I am Lorenzo Sablay, your host for today. We hope to see you again tomorrow at 11 a.m. GMT+7. Stay safe, everyone. Goodbye for now.